All right, welcome everyone. It's good to have folks here. It's Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. We gather for the monthly work session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We have 5 items on the agenda today. 2 of those are items for future consideration, around which we're just going to check to see if there are any questions. And then 3 are those around which we have presentations. Of 5 items, 3 are transportation related. First item for future consideration, around which we just want to see if there are any questions, has to do with the Atlanta Highway West Broad Street GDOT safety improvements. I'm very excited that after many years of us saying, GDOT, please can we get some multimodal opportunity and some safety improvements. These days, GDOT is sometimes coming to us and saying, hey, we think we've got a good idea that we could co-fund. And that involves here some transportation improvements from roughly the forthcoming roundabout at Hancock and West Broad, all the way out to where Atlanta Highway and Epsbridge meet. So just want to see if there are any questions about this for staff. We've got Rani Katreeb here, who is poised and ready to answer any questions, no matter how big or small you may have. And I've got Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brad, for being here today. So I looked at the funding that we have to come up with, $3 billion. I'm assuming that GDOT, there's a match, that's going to be a match from them. And before I got on the commission, they were talking about the roundabout. And I guess my question is, and I know that's a GDOT project, because there's a main drag at the downtown. That traffic flow still gonna be the same. I was talking about 4 lanes initially about the traffic flow. That's still gonna be the same, or what's the traffic flow gonna be like if the roundabout coming?
Sure. So this project is separate than the roundabout. I can speak a little bit on the roundabout, but I would not take a lot of time. It is a multi-lane, so it's a 2-lane east and 2-lane west on Broad. The roundabout is a partnership project with GDOT. So we are involved with GDOT and we are funding the right-of-way utility, some of the utility costs and the design, while GDOT will be funding the majority of construction for that project. The Atlanta Highway West Broad GDOT safety project ends and merge or marry with the existing West Broad roundabout project. Okay. If that helps you.
So that'll stay 4 lanes then?
4 lanes, yes, sir. 2 lanes east and 2 lanes west.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ronnie, just for the benefit of the public, kind of on what side of West Broad, Atlanta Highway, would the multi-use path ride? Would it be on the what I call the old Kroger and the whole side, or would it be on the Beach Haven side?
The Beach Haven side? Yes.
Any other questions?
My one question is just crossings. Is there anything in here about, 4 lanes, a lot of traffic, a lot of speed?
The project is
only on one side, so.
Sure. Sorry, interrupted you. The project is safety improvement. So the focus is safety. And that's why GDOT approached us and said, if you want to include a multimodal facility, multi-use path facility, that's not part of our project, we will need additional funding. And then they came back and said, this is how much it would take for us to include a multi-use path. The multi-use path improvement will include improvements to every crossing, every driveway. There, as you see on the layout, there is multiple right in, right out, center medians, a full upgrade to signals. There will be also reduction in the length of crossings. Also a collaborative effort with any future project that ACC is championing, funding or planning. So those opportunities will be studied and coordinated along the way.
Any others on Atlanta Highway West Broad? All right, that will be part of a forthcoming agenda report.
Correct.
All right, go forth and do well.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're moving on to TSPLOST 2026 pre-designated options, and Josh Hawkins, our capital projects director, is here to answer any questions you may have about this.
Questions.
Mike?
So it looks like all the options include $45 million for transit. It doesn't allow for expansion of our transit. system. So I guess my question is, also see one of, I think all the options may include a $7 million transfer station at the mall, which I'm wondering, I guess looking in hindsight, we should have included that in the community benefit agreement. We did, but that's okay. Well, it's not okay, but my question is this. So you're spending $45 million transit that you're not going to be able to grow. Transfer station, and understanding it's meant to help when you grow the system, you're transferred from one place to another. If you're not growing the system, we're going to spend $7 million, we're allocating $7 million to the transfer station. Doesn't make much sense to me if the system's not growing to have that transfer station. Also doesn't make sense. I mean, in my estimation, by the time, that mall is starting to be built and come out of the ground, this TSPLOST plus another one will have come and gone before that's finished based on the timeline. So at any rate, I guess all that to say is I have some hesitation about some of the recommendations that, or some of the options, well, all of the options, I guess, includes that. I think again too, I mean, if we're going to grow the system, we have to go back and look at the fares and see, I mean, what other way are we going to grow the system without that?
Vic, if you could, now, let me start the answer here. I asked Director Pope about the expansion of the system, and we do intend to expand the system, but
I didn't say that in the document.
you're right. I'll let Director Pope explain what that expansion might look like. But let me address the transfer facility. The transfer facility, well, the mall can break ground at any time. When the mall breaks ground, we're automatically on the clock.
Right.
Build the transfer station.
For 10 years, I think it is.
That's right. So we need to make sure the reason why it's in there is because we just need to be prepared. But as far as expanding the service, I'll let Director Pope speak to that.
Yes, sir. And thank you, Commissioner, for your attention to the transit item. The $45 million over a 5-year period allows us approximately $9 million per year to operate transit services. As of current, we're looking at about $7.8 to $7.9 million a year in operating expenses. This will allow us to restore our current services, restore those original operating hours, and then also at y'all's direction, once you have time to review the TTP, coming forward to you later this on 2025 to follow your service recommendations as to any expansions that you're interested in. We are trying to be conservative on our estimates as to prevent from taking needed funds from other projects, but at the same time, based on your direction, we may say that we would allot a certain amount of funds for dedicated service expansion, or maybe you might have liked to have us come back at a later time to discuss the funds needed for service expansions in light of other projects that are currently going on.
Well, and I think that makes sense that we need to hear some of those discussions before we give guidance to the TSPLOST committee, especially if the GDP is going to come to us later this year. Is that what I understand?
Yes, sir.
So better understand what those expansions are and what that would cost. I mean, at the end of the day, it may cost more than 40. So we need to know. But I still maintain though that at the end of the day, treating this TSPLOST committee like we have all the other TSPLOST and SPLOST committees, and even when we had the courthouse and the jail on there and Classic Center, we still ran it through the SPLOST or TSPLOST committees to get their thoughts on it. And that's it's appropriate for us to do that, regardless if it's a designated project or a county project. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the last TSPLOST and last SPLOST ended up putting a lot of money in for paving and other things, and we took it out. So,
As a corollary to Mike's question, it sounds like what you could have available for us is something of a menu of transit extension and expansion options. By extension, I mean longer routes and expansion of greater frequency.
Yes, sir.
And so is that the kind of thing we can expect to see?
Yes, sir. And the plans for expansion and enhancement as far as transit goes really align with the strategic goal number 5 and the strategic plan for the that you all have been working on as far as reduced headways on routes. So we have 30-minute or less service on our routes, especially during peak hours where people need that service. One example that you've probably heard, or at least some of you all heard me use in the past, is that right now we're asking our community to basically, essentially, from our standpoint as vehicle owners, pick up their keys 60 minutes ahead of the time that they actually need to go anywhere. And that's a lot of time for anybody. And so one of the priorities that you all have identified is reducing that wait time for the bus service. And that is one of the top priorities that we'll be working on. However, duplicating the service to create those reduced headways, that can be expensive. Essentially, we're looking at somewhere around $300,000 per vehicle per 8-hour time block period as a sort of a ballpark figure. That can change depending on the service that we're offering or the area of service as far as densities. But we're roughly about $300,000 an hour for service to 350.
Vic, would service expansions and other enhancements to the transit system, do you intend, or does your department intend to submit those to the TSPLOST committee?
Yes, yes.
So we had to draw some boundaries on what packages could look like, and we tried to really stay and look at what the current TSPLOST was funding and riff on that and not open the door on too much new, with the transfer station being the one exception, and that's because it's got a pending time clock. So,
Well, and I appreciate that, but I do know that pending time box, I think it was 10 years. So you could do this TSPLOST and another one and still have it ready to go.
5 years.
Was it 5 years? 5 years. Well, and that's it. We don't do any more delays with the folks doing the project. So I'm not going to be too worried about this because I know that once the final list comes to us, we can change it like we did last time.
That's right.
So at any rate.
Got Ovita and Carolyn.
I guess I know we're moving forward with TSPLOST 2026. And I know I don't want people to think that I don't know what TSPLOST I'm talking. But I just have a problem, or I don't understand how we are moving forward. We've already said there's problems or concerns on how people serve on these committees. But also we're moving to 2026. And I personally, in my district, have not heard anything about the current TSPLOST that we're in. So I'm real reluctant to even vote on something, support something, when we have not filled our obligations or have started working on those obligations. And the District 9 TSPLOST and District now to whatever, it's a little bit different because of the bucket. So I can't convince folk about another TSPLOST until we at least show that we've done something. The District 9 TSPLOST that we're in now is 8 mil. And I believe there's right now 1.7 mil in the bank, ready to spend. I am still waiting to see what we're going to do before we move further. And I surely hope we find a way to gather the information, kind of like Commissioner Pamby was saying. Y'all are the experts, but also you got to take in consideration, community. So those things need to be in place from my point of view. They didn't respond.
I will note one of at least the sort of kind of fiscal questions that always comes up with these transitions from one SPLOST or TSPLOST package to the next is kind of both for efficacy of the operations, particularly those things that you want to fund year in, year out. I mean, pavement is a good example. You want to make sure that you're going to have dollars every year. And then even kind of on the retail management perspective, you don't want to tell a retailer like, oh, well, we're going to stop collecting for some period of time, and then we're going to begin collecting again. You sort of want them to sort of have their system well programmed so they.
But Kelly, the District 9 is a little bit different, and we don't want to relive how we got there. And I'm saying that some point, and it'd be different if this was the first time I've asked, if I just waited today to ask. This question I've asked several times.
You have, and Commissioner Thornton, we are in the process of making sure we get some of the user groups set up, but I will ask Josh and Keith to speak to where we are specifically with the District 9 project.
Thank you.
And actually, earlier this morning, we had a user group meeting specifically on the project, and I think you're referring to.
Right. We met second time for that user group this morning. In fact, one of the citizen members you appointed asked this exact same question almost about that. And the way I answered to that gentleman was that, particularly with TSPLOST, these projects take a long time to develop. That group has started, and as you said, that one is different because it's a bucket. It's not a project that says, go build a fire station and we can start to design today and design it. It is, we've got North Athens, got $8 million. There were 15 projects that were submitted that got boiled down to that. And then there's a whole lot more other needs. So this committee is going to take a while. This user group is going to take a little while to filter through those projects and the needs of the community to just to bring back to you of here's what the user group recommends, Mayor Commission, public, what do y'all think? So that's going to take a little while.
You know, I guess my point is still this. I have no problem with taking a little while, but we do need to find a way to streamline our system, period, across the board. I'm not just talking about my district, but the good thing is, after several asks, somebody's able to tell me you at least met with my folk.
Yes.
Somebody's at least able to tell me that we're moving. So I'm good with that, but nobody told me this, and that's why I keep bringing it up. So thank you.
Sure.
Carol.
Yeah, I'm looking at option 1, and then, you're saying here that all the other options are going to be compared to this option 1, and it's go to the reduced one, the effect on the general budget for these projects. But back to like the original list here, some of these things, well, let's give an example. You got two extremes. The mall transfer station would be built, finished. You don't have to do that anymore, right? But the way the transit is laid out, for example, that seems to be just what's needed at the 8 million or whatever the number that would, from what I'm looking at, if we were going to keep the same service, and even we've discussed the fare box and everything else, doesn't equal 8 million, even if you put that back in, it was a fairly small amount. But so the transit service, to continue what we're having, that money needs to be either come from the TSPLOST or the general budget. There's not like a real choice unless we cut out that. But so I'm using, those are assumptions that I'm making. So we got one there when we know that money needs to continue. We have one where we know we build the transfer station, finished, we don't need to do that. But on these other ones, some of it is maintenance, some of it is catching up. So what I'm asking, to lead into this question, and let's forget about the neighborhood traffic, the residential traffic management program, but the other ones having to do with a road, live stream, bridge repair, and bus life cycle replacement. If we went hypothetical with this full massive large percentage, and then we get to the next TSPLOST, would we be caught up in a way that these numbers would be smaller going forward for those other projects? We obviously, the station would not be on there as an ask, but if you did it, let's say you could continue with the bus forever, right? But on these other ones, how much would they reduce? If we do this, how caught up are we going to be in the next 5 years? And how much could we reduce these numbers?
Let me offer a general answer to that question. And then I'll probably phone a friend on specifics. The question that we tried to answer internally for ourselves, specifically on these designated sort of activities, we were understanding that as a commission, you were recognizing that there are some things we already know we need for the good functioning of the government. And so what we asked ourselves is, what will it take just to, number one, continue doing what we're already doing, take care of what we already have, not do necessarily anything new, but just keep up with what we have. And so that's what option 1 is intended to answer, right?
Right.
Recognizing the volume of that and the scale of that, we kind of said, probably need to provide a little more information on all these activities to show, well, if they wanted to do something a little bit different, what would the impact be on the service? What would the impact be on the general fund?
Right.
So that's intended to answer really for all of them, with the exception of the transfer station. That one's a little bit different. The rest of these, it's really about what does it take to continue doing what we're doing today, taking care of the.
Right, but
Yeah.
we'd be doing that at different options, and I guess I'm saying, I'm using this analogy, but maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not, or works. But let's say I'm at home and taking care of my home, and I'm like, man, if I just work on this really hard for 4 or 5 years, I'm gonna take care of all the stuff, and then afterwards, I'm gonna have money to go to Disneyland every year, right? So if we did this, and I'm not saying I'm for it or not, but if we did it, like the massive one, where would we be able to say, okay, public, we're doing this in this sort of way, but when it comes back next time, we're gonna have more projects for this other. I'm just trying to figure out the math on this.
So let me offer
Yeah.
one example on the live stream pipe replacement. So we have 12 failed pipes up there. And then we have pipes throughout the county
Right.
that are okay.
That's right.
So we're focusing on the 12 failed pipes. So just because we catch up on 12 failed pipes doesn't
There could
mean
be
in the
12
next
more
5
now.
years, 12 more are going to fail. And think about paving that way. So I would offer that.
Okay, that's,
Have you spent,
you're saying we could have this forever.
have you spent the money that we put in the general fund for the failed pipes live stream this year?
So I've got 3 different answers for you.
Here we go. It was a complex question.
So first to this question, 3 that TPW has put forward. Bridges is a sustainable 2-year program. We think it's going to cost about $2 million every 2 years into the future. And then think about inflation on that. As Manager Jones said, live stream pipes is really just trying to push down that deficit list. So we are focused on the 12 pipes that are currently at the worst level of inventory right now. But by the time we get through this next 5 years, we're going to have at least 12 more that are in that cycle. Got a list that is probably about 40 pipes that have been identified total that we think in the next decade or so are going to need this kind of treatment. So live stream, unfortunately, is the one where we have the largest deficit to tackle. Once it's tackled, we'll be good. I mean, if you could give us, we're not asking for this, but if you give us $30 million today for that, we could say, great. After that, the amount that we bring in through the utility fund every year is enough to sustain us into the future. We're not asking for that. We're going to go look for some grants. We're going to, push for this over the next few years. But that's just, and then the paving one is probably the most complicated, but I'll say if you all were to fund us in that option 1, we would be able to push down the paving deficit list. So that's any road that's below a certain paving condition index score, the I score. So the next time we came to you with, what would that be? TSPLOST 2031. At that point, we wouldn't, obviously inflation would still bring the costs up, but it would not be as big of a percentage of the next TSPLOST that we'd probably be asking.
And you'd be able to, following up on Mike's, you'd be able to do this. I mean, that's the thing you were like.
My question was, did we spend the money that we put in the general fund this year for live stream?
For live stream, yes. Yeah.
Where did that go?
Well, so it wasn't, it was ARPA funds and TSPLOST 2023 funds for live stream pipe replacement. So we have not had general capital funds for live stream
funds, whatever we put in the
Yes, and that went, what was the 2 last projects that?
So we have LMIG funding, the ones that we completed. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The live stream pipe replacement that we are working on are completed with dollars.
It's the ones that we're designing right now. It's Lavender and Roberts.
Lavender and Roberts. Yes.
Okay. Yep. So that was enough to go toward the design for Lavender and Roberts Road, which are the next 2 on that list. That's why you don't see those 2 on the list that we sent y'all for TSPLOST 2026. Those should be covered.
Got Patrick and Jesse.
There's a quick question on residential, bridge repair and maintenance of $4 million. That's $4 million every excuse me, is that 4 million every year, and that's 4 million through the life cycle of the?
So that's total, and that it comes out to 2 million every 2 years. So 4 million for a 5-year program.
Jesse?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about sustainable funding and, we didn't end up with these backlogs out of nowhere. They didn't just like suddenly appear, right? We ended up with these backlogs because we've underfunded this stuff for decades. So I think one of the things to just think about as we're moving into TSPLOST is like, if we don't want to go with option one and we do want to catch up on the backlog that's developed for decades, we have to start funding this with general fund dollars. Like that's what I appreciate about this document, I guess, is that it lays that out. So I'm not gonna, do I feel strongly that like this body needs to fund this stuff through TSPLOST versus general fund? Not particularly, but I do feel it's important that this body funds. So we've gravitated toward trying to get a lot of special projects into the special SPLOST, right? But we haven't paid for the ordinary stuff adequately through the general fund. And the ARPA that we've used to catch up with it is gone. So at this point, I think we've just got to kind of decide, like, if we, whatever we don't pre-designate into TSPLOST, are we prepared to fund that with the general fund more than we are currently? That's basically what this is to do, right? So.
John?
I just think the more that we can use in TSPLOST and eliminate from putting in the general fund would be helpful to our taxpayers also, because our budget keeps increasing year over year. And whatever we can do to reduce that increase and possibly do a millage rate rollback or whatever that we can do to give some relief to our taxpayers, I think that's what we ought to look at.
I agree with, that, the general fund is it's just the general fund, and we're struggling. We look like we're struggling. And and I'm always the one that want to say, I told you so, but, the ARPA, these would have been good ARPA direction dollars. Those dollars are gone, like my colleague just said. So I think if we have a plan that we help taxpayers with any kind of, I know we're struggling with the floating homesteaders and all that. If there's a way that we can relieve our taxpayers on one end and do this through a TSPLOST, I would feel much more comfortable than going into a general fund.
Thanks everyone for your comments. I'll observe that sometimes in this work, projects that we're involved in evoke great joy. And we're shouting and looking forward to ribbon cuttings and festivals and the like. And while maybe the roof not caving in does not provoke great joy, that's essentially what we're doing here. Just our core assets as a community will continue to be sustained. So I appreciate everybody's work on this, and I suspect there will be some conversation around the corner when we meet on this in the agenda setting session. Jesse?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, this references attachments, and I heard somebody came to the podium speak to that, but I don't see the attachments in the slideshow, and we didn't get those with Manager Jones' email, I don't think. Did we?
Make sure you get them.
The detailed list of which pipe projects and which.
Yes.
All right, so we are moving on to the presentation hour. And the first of those is going to be the North Avenue Raise project concept. We're very fortunate to have received federal funds, given the great efforts of our staff in their application package, as well as the responsiveness on part of federal government. But we've got to get down to brass tacks and actually put some things on the ground, figure out what those things are going to be. So we have Rani Katreeb back at the podium for more fun.
Well, thank you for having me again. Appreciate the opportunity. North Avenue Corridor Project, as you're all aware of, this grant was awarded officially in late 2022. We've been working with the Fed and the state to secure a grant agreement. We were able to secure that earlier last month. We are in the administrative kind of phase of securing the funding, which they call it authorization of funding. It's literally a digital signature on their system. And at that point, we are set to go. We did begin early with the early design, but let me start the presentation here and we'll go through the slides with you. Today, we'll give you an update on this grant, where we are. We will present to you our early public engagement that we completed last year in the fall. And last, we'll go over the alternatives of the projects along with a recommended alternative presented by staff and the designer on the project. We'll talk through history, description, going efforts, public engagement, like I said, stakeholders input. This is a big part of what we did last couple of months. And then end with the alternatives with next steps. All right. On the history side, I don't want to bore you with reading this out loud. Really, the major milestone that we made on this project was in summer of last year. This is where we realized the obligation date is coming up soon, obligation date of September 30th, 2026. And at that time, we learned what does obligation date mean. Every program that came from the federal government with the Job and Infrastructure Act bill had its own obligation definition. For the RAISE grant, it meant to be under contract for construction, to be already done with design, already done with bid award, already have a contractor that has signed documents and you're ready to go. That made us very concerned with the time that we have. And so we were looking at ways to meet this obligation. Otherwise, we will have to decline the award. At that point, we met with Manager Blaine. We walked the corridor with FHWA, the federal agency in Atlanta, and along with GDOT staff. We observed all the, the conditions of the corridor, the sidewalk, its closeness to the road, the traveling traffic. We visited the site where a pedestrian unfortunately was struck by a car and died. We walked all the way up to the loop and observed bicyclists trying to attempt going with traffic, crossing the bridges over the loop. At that meeting, we decided that it is best to go ahead and change the scope of the project, reduce parts of the scope in effort to meet the obligation date. That meant for us is to take out the replacement of the bridge over the river. And you're going to hear me say those two terms often today, bridge over the river and bridge over the loop. Bridge over the river is the one we own. Bridge over the loop is the one that the state owns. So we removed the bridge, but included rehabilitation of the deck or configuration of travel lanes on the bridge. And also we considered reduction of right-of-way impact along the corridor. So the existing right-of-way is what we have to work with. Any impact to right-of-way on a state or federal funded project means a lengthy process. If we hit all 60 parcels on this project, that means we will be it will take us about 3 years to complete the right-of-way phase of the project. We do not have that kind of time on the obligation date published with the award. That being said, and I'm sorry I'm taking a little bit longer here and I don't have all this written, but I thought to share that with you. You may already know this or recall this from the memo that the manager shared with you all back in June of 2023. I'll fast forward. Here we are today. You all have awarded the selected consultant, AECOM, Technical Services. AECOM team has been working since April on delivering this project concept-wise, working with the state and the federal agency in Atlanta to maintain the schedule as we have it today and going forward. As I said, in earlier or late last year, we started public engagement. We had 258 online survey participants, 255 in English and 7 in Spanish. Additional data is shown here. It's really an eye opener when you look at the social media outreach that we have. The last bullet point here, we have numbers in thousands of visits to our pages back then. Great job to all who participated and the design team. Jacobs also, On-Call Jacobs is helping us with project management and with the environmental phase of this project, who actually championed this effort. So I appreciate that. We summarized here our public engagement, and this information will be shared with you. The full report will be shared with you with the agenda coming forward in the October-November cycle for your consideration. The major concerns that we've collected, and it's really, we couldn't type too much here, but we tried to summarize to the best of our ability. Wider sidewalks, the homeless population, need for bike lanes, need for better lighting, and the need to upgrade the bridge over Loop 10 with bike and ped facilities. These are the highlights of the public input we received, but you will have a full report with the agenda to review. Earlier, or I should say, starting August, we hosted a design charrette here in this room. The fire department, planning staff, and multiple staff members from the department showed up. We looked at different alternatives, and that generated a series of follow-up meetings. People who heard that we've met and discussed multiple alternatives, and there was claims that, oh, we haven't heard of this project. We'd like to know more. Also, we as staff identified that we should reach out to like central services, stormwater staff within our own department, get a little bit more feedback from them. So that generated what we start calling it the stakeholders list and gathered this input. This list here, you see that we met a few times and collected feedback. Generally speaking, the stakeholders are not necessarily people who live on the corridor or navigate the corridor, but rather have interest in the corridor. And we felt strongly about including their voices, even though they don't count as many. For example, the Athens Downtown Development Authority, we met with 2 people, but they speak for multiple business owners. The same thing with when we are going to meet with possibly Bike Athens, the same thing they would represent multiple people. We still have plans to meet with Athens in Motion and other interest groups that have reached to us recently, and we will include their input moving forward. I'd like to add that we have public engagement planned for this project. It's going to go live at the end of this week, and we will have an online survey with online comments closing on November 1st. We also have a public meeting. It will be hosted in the Boys and Girls Club of Athens, and it's from 5 to 7. And on the 22nd of October, you should receive a postcard in the mail, and we're also sending postcards to folks within the vicinity of the project. All right, so this is North Avenue map. The project starts from Willow Street, crosses the river, go all the way up the hill, crosses Strickland Avenue, and go beyond the loop and stops at Freeman Drive. The application back in 2022, the RAISE grant application, included various elements of improvements on this project. And not necessarily I want to remind you what it included, but I would like to highlight what have changed since then. In 2022, we applied for this grant. At that time, GDOT, the state, has programmed a bridge replacement, the bridge over the loop for replacement. Just this summer, we got the news that the state has re-ranked their priorities for bridge replacement, and this bridge is no longer on their top priority for replacement and is being considered for canceling. There were a lot of coordination discussions on the higher ups, as I understand, with GDOT commissioner, GDOT office staff, multiple levels. And this project, as far as I can tell, it's slated for cancellation, unfortunately. Now, GDOT said, we're going to do everything we can to support any application you guys move forward with to complement this work, to complement North Avenue project. If you come up with a solution that requires additional funding, reach out to us, let us know where you are. Let's see how can we help you. Now, this was just verbal. It's definitely a sad news for us, but that did not stop us. Today, we will present to you some solutions that we believe GDOT would like, and it doesn't cost a lot of dollars from our own project. The other improvements you can read here. It includes resurfacing, stormwater, trees, streetlights, and along with the other roadway improvements on traffic lights and bike bed facilities. Sure, you're familiar with North Avenue corridor. These are a few images to remind you and put you in the kind of, how does it feel to be walking along North Avenue? A lot of folks think that, oh, you have sidewalks on North Avenue. Why would you need more sidewalks? The fact that the speed limit, posted speed limit is 40 and average speed, 85th average speed, meaning 85% of people are driving between 43 and 48 based on digital data. So it doesn't mean that we've done a traffic study, speed study. We haven't done a speed study, but that's from the data we have, artificial data. And then at the end, picture number 4 shows you that bottleneck and the bridge over the loop. The fact that it has no sidewalk, no bike lane, very low railing. I remember, I'll tell you, everyone who walked that site around June of summer 2023 was just astonished. Like, it's really amazing that this exists and we haven't fixed it. And we leave it to the state, but the state needs to be reminded by us often that this is a problem that we'd like to see fixed. All right, this slide here shows the existing, and at this point, I'm going to hand this over to Jonathan DeGioia. Jonathan is our roadway design lead and on this project, and he's going to walk you through existing and proposed alternatives recommended, and then other alternatives that we did not or we're not recommending. But I'd like to say that all the alternatives you're going to see today, they would work in terms of right-of-way. Where they would not work or have concerns is their ability to convey traffic or meet all stakeholders' input. With that.
Thank you, Rani. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. Again, I'm Jonathan DeGioia. I'm with AECOM, the prime consultant for design on this project. I am the lead designer. I'm here with also our AECOM project manager, Will Sheehan, and appreciate the opportunity to be involved in this exciting project and to be presenting to you all today. So looking at sort of the main section of North Avenue, existing typical section here, this is North Avenue, most of the corridor from Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway up to Old Hole Road. You've got 5-lane section, 2 northbound lanes, 2 southbound lanes, and in some places a 2-way left turn lane, and some places left turn lanes at intersections there in the middle. Fairly generous lane widths, about 12-foot lanes out there. Existing sidewalks in most places, about 5, sometimes up to 7 feet, but fairly minimum width sidewalks with little to no buffer between the sidewalks and the roadway lanes. And then utilities often directly behind the sidewalk. So the example in this image has some of those large power transmission towers. The distance from the roadway varies, but sometimes kind of right behind the sidewalk there. So that's part of our limitation in terms of working within the existing right of way and trying to make the best of the schedule and other resources we have on this project. So moving on to focus on the specific area over the State Route 10 loop. This just kind of shows roughly the existing dimensions. You have the 2 bridges that carry North Avenue over the loop, 2 lanes northbound, 2 lanes southbound, no existing sidewalks or bike lanes here. And then finally, for the existing conditions, looking at the area between Willow Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, this is the existing bridge, city-owned bridge over the North Oconee River. Existing 4 lanes out here, also fairly generous in width, ranging from 12 feet to about 15 feet roughly. Existing sidewalks as well on the bridge, fairly minimal widths, about 5 feet wide, and then no existing buffers between the sidewalks and the roadway here on the bridge. So moving into proposed and preferred alternatives. So I'm going to start by showing the staff preferred alternative for North Avenue, and then also discuss some of the other alternatives that we analyzed through this process. And so looking at a sort of a typical section rendering of, and again, we're early in the design process, but sort of a typical section rendering of the staff preferred alternative here. As we mentioned before, one of the things we're up against is the working within the existing footprint of the roadway and the sidewalks. So we did a good bit of traffic analysis. We have collected traffic along the corridor and wanted to work with, see what could we do to maximize our use of the space here, provide the things that the project is intending to provide: sidewalks, separation between the sidewalks and the roadway, opportunities for street trees, pedestrian lighting, safe pedestrian crossings, and also green infrastructure, stormwater treatments where space allows. So one of the alternatives that we looked at was removing one of the existing southbound lanes and repurposing that to reclaim some of that space. The existing traffic volumes on North Avenue support this with a passing level of service, and expected to not have a major impact on travel times through North Avenue. This alternative does provide some of those key components. It provides a shared use path, as you can see on the left side, which is kind of a wider path for both biking and walking, as well as other modes like micromobility, scooters, e-bikes that we're seeing more and more of these days, and provides that within the existing right-of-way. So this was one that I'll show you some of the other ones we looked at as well, but this is one that meets the many of the comments that were received during public input last year, as well as has been seen by the stakeholders who Rani mentioned earlier, and generally was received favorably by the majority of stakeholders for its ability to maintain two northbound lanes kind of in the out of town direction, while maintaining a southbound lane and a two-way left turn lane, and providing the other anticipated project benefits. So I'll show you some of the other things we looked at here as well.
Commissioner Wright, clarifying question about the visual.
Well, yeah, I was curious, and it might just be sending us the data, is how you determine that people leave, there's more people leaving town 2 lanes than coming in. Because it seems to me like it's probably a 2-a-day.
Great question.
People are doing both. So is there something you can share with us about why you picked it this way?
Yes, so I can give a quick response. So average annual daily traffic, they're very similar. There are a similar number of people coming in and going out during each day. It's a very slight imbalance toward the northbound people leaving. The main differences are, for one, major events when there are people, the same number of people probably coming and going, but leaving in a much more concentrated flow versus kind of trickling into town for events. And then also in terms of emergency response and emergency management, that was some feedback that we received from emergency services in Athens-Clarke County, that partly because of the topography in the hills and because of their operations for managing their response routes, that having a second northbound lane was something that they preferred as well.
So they could get faster to that first response connection with the people who can.
That was what we heard.
And then my next question would be about sending us feedback, because it was my understanding that fire and the police were not happy with relay idea. So maybe we can get some of that feedback after, as a follow-up.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to some of the other alternatives we looked at. We also considered, so here's kind of a sub-alternative on what we just showed. Same roadway, typical section, but this is an opportunity where in some locations, we don't have our full property line survey yet, but in some locations, based on right-of-way availability and maybe based on other things like topography, there's an opportunity to separate the bicycle users from the people walking. And it's actually partly covered up by this box here, but you can see this kind of shows some separated bike lanes on the side there going in each direction next to the sidewalk. So to make the space needed for that would require taking a little bit of space, most likely out of some of the buffers here. So that's why we're showing some different vegetation that may be appropriate for a slightly smaller buffer space. We're looking at 4 feet versus 5 feet here, but that's a lot of times the difference between what would accommodate a full-size street tree versus something a little bit smaller. So again, we don't have exact locations for where this is versus where other things are, but this is one of the things we're looking at in terms of providing some of that user and speed separations on the active transportation facilities. When I say that, I mean the walking and biking facilities themselves.
Got this visual?
Yes, I guess with the bike lanes, do we know how much bicycle lane or bicycle traffic that we get on this corridor? Have we did that type of study or look at that at all?
Great question. We do not have exact projections. We don't have, it's a little bit harder to project, but what we do see often in many projects like this that I've worked on in the past is that when there are no existing dedicated facilities out there, only the bravest or the most, those who have no other option are the ones who you'll see out there today. And then when you provide that path, it becomes a more desirable mode to use, as well as supporting the kinds of developments that the county has put in the future land use plans out here, the land use plans that include things more like Main Street, retail and mixed use developments support multiple modes of travel as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's been a lot of years, and I get it right now, the way it's set up, it'd be dangerous for anybody on a bike going down that area, bridge and everything, but I guess we sacrifice the lanes for bikes. I guess I don't know. I guess I take a look as we move forward. I just don't want to sacrifice, I think we're trying to be forced to be in a bike community. We're not. We're really not. I mean, we got a lot of people that ride bikes, and I'm not against bikes, but I think that's important. There's so much force concentrating on bikes, not so concerned about how many cars are going this way. If we can go 4 lanes and get 4 lanes on what I think is for the main drag, then we need to take a look at this. Let's start being.
I did. Is it all right if I just go ahead? I did want to point out that there's really not too much difference between the amount of space sacrificed in this 1A versus this 1B. And if we could move that little gray box out of the way, it would make a lot more sense. But honestly, it is more for the safety of separating cyclists from pedestrians, especially on those downhill sections. That's really where we might see this typical section. Think about going down toward MLK, that section right there. It really makes a lot more sense to get bikes out of the path of pedestrians, people walking their dogs, that kind of thing, so that you're not having those conflict points. So I think what we're trying to show is both of these would work with the same level of kind of sacrifice of the rest of the roadway, just needs to be strategically used at differently in different locations.
I just want to make sure I understand, these are your recommendations and stuff. So there's room for some adjustments if they come. I'm a firm believer, build it and they come. So if you build bike lanes, they're gonna come. So I ain't trying to invite the bikes, okay? So I'll be real clear. And I really want to wait till you get to the end of your presentation. But there is a difference even with this footage. It is a slight difference. So we could talk about that at the end of this presentation.
Sure.
All right. Can I just ask a question about the plants? Because that was what you last talked about. So these shorter plants obviously aren't going to provide much of any shade. And I'm just thinking about, how essential that is here for like half of the year for anyone who's going to walk or bike along a long stretch of roads. So with this like 1B, is there any room to put taller trees on either side? Like what would you have to do to do that? Like, would that be requiring more right of way to the right, or is it possible to narrow one of those lanes? Or and this is coming from somebody who likes option two, but
Sort of pursuing this sort of Jeff Speck notion that, you want to comfortable pedestrian face.
It's a great question.
I mean, not just comfortable, like literally safe, right? People literally die of heat exhaustion. That's only going to get worse in the coming years. And so,
Commissioner Hill, if I may answer this question, not directly, but offer this. This is a high level typical section. That's our goal. We're showing you what could we do. And in cases where there is steep slopes, we're considering this alternative. If there is enough right of way to make it wider and plant a tree, then that's what we do. So what I hear you say, you are prioritizing increasing the buffer, then increasing the sidewalk to 7 feet, for example. So you'd like to see trees. So we'll take that note. And in our design effort, when we have the opportunity to plant trees or show trees, right? In lieu of shrubbery is.
Well, I guess what I'm less concerned about what's shown here, more concerned about what actually ends up in the ground.
Right.
So if you show me a tree here and then you plant a bush, that's much worse than showing a bush and planting a tree.
Yes, sir.
But, the hills, right? It makes sense you want to have a separate lane for bikes because they're moving real fast when they're going downhill. But where are people going to be most exhausted and most need the shade is when they're walking or biking uphill. So, it almost seems like especially important to me to try to make sure we have it on the hills. Whatever that's worth, if we're going to try to build a facility at all, I think you can actually use safely seems. Shade is not just about pleasant, although it is also that. It's about safety too.
Commissioner, from somebody who used to do plant selection on these plans, there are standards within our tree ordinance about how much ground space is needed. We don't want to make a multi-use path or a sidewalk and then heave it with something that's too large. On the other hand, even with some of the narrower concepts they show here, there are more upright, smaller growing plant selections that can generate shade. Some of the very large growing crepe myrtles, for example, while not as good as an oak, certainly are better than the status quo.
And to the question about like the other side of all this, because this is just like sky on the presentation.
Right.
But like, is there any room on the other sides of the path to be doing any plantings? Or are we pretty much like right up against our right of way?
And that width does vary. So there are some places, not all the property lines are a perfectly straight line. So there are some places where there may be extra room for planting on the backside like that too. Those are great points. Thank you.
It does look like we're sailing into the Keys.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, what are the cost difference between having the extra path and then having a shared path? And is this 100% funded by the raised grant? So we're not having to come out?
Correct. So the maximum funding for the raised grant is the $24.9 million, $0.8 million. That's all we can get from the raised grant. So we're designing within those parameters, and we believe all improvements shown should be within that cost range. We will be working close with the state because we're passing their, going through their right of way. We're hoping that if any costs are higher, we could go to the state and seek support. We will give you updates on those cost estimates as we start seeing them. Right now, we are on a high level kind of design. And like I said, it's a very high level concept cost estimate.
And as long as you're staying within those existing right of way, I don't think you're going to see really major differences from one alternative to the other, as long as we're kind of keeping the same footprint.
Ronnie, I think you generated another question for you.
So, so right now we are spending, our funds and then we will recapture it when we receive the raised grant. Is that right?
So to dive a little bit deeper into that, authorization of fund hasn't happened yet. They're telling us it's going to be somewhere in the week of October 15th. And they're learning and telling us those updates as we continue. We thought that date was September 7th. They said, no, it's actually when we do the signature on the system. They're learning and they're telling us what they're learning. So right now, my understanding, it's October 15, the week of October 15, they'll be able to sign off, and then all expenses by AECOM is reimbursable. That's the key word.
And if they don't sign off, because you've had changes with them in the past, are we liable? Is that our expense then?
Yes, so far it is at our expense up to October 15.
But if they don't sign October the 15th, I know we gotta go forward.
Sure.
I'm not trying to stop it. I just
I-
want clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
cheap flight to Washington.
We're gonna achieve, no, we gotta get first class.
We're hoping that that's not the case. It's
Okay.
literally staff who need to sign, and it's a system that kind of blocked out in that a month period, September 15 to October 15, which is the federal government fiscal year, just like we do between June and then July. So that's why, and they didn't tell us and give us warnings about it, otherwise we would.
My colleagues know, I think I know, I just want my colleagues to know that this is on the table as a possibility, especially since we've already had some changes in the proposal.
Correct, and I can speak to that risk here later on.
Okay.
We're gonna see the next segment.
All right.
As, to reorient us, trips going north, trips going south, we have numbers, right? Could you give us those quick numbers?
There's some in, I found some in here too.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, it's in the, it's
Except to
So
the
the next-
bridges,
next one.
be in the bridges.
right. So let's see, so moving on to, so now we're gonna look at some of the alternatives that we also considered, which were not staff recommended at this time. So as Ronnie mentioned, we looked at a 3-lane section as well. So some of the benefits compared to what we just saw, you have a little bit more space to work with in the right of way. You have a little bit more space if you want to have the bike lane separated on both sides of the roadway to further reduce conflicts there. This also addresses goals of speed management and reducing speeding and shorter pedestrian crossing distances at signals or at mid-block locations, bus stops, things like that. This does handle traffic generally well as far as average annual daily traffic goes in most locations of the corridor. There are some areas on the north end of the corridor near the loop where traffic would not be handled very well, very adequately by this design in terms of throughput and delay. This design did receive some positive feedback in terms of stakeholder coordination, but did not really receive very positive feedback from the majority of stakeholders. And we mentioned some of those concerns earlier, emergency response, major events, and the fact that near the very northern area, near the loop bridges, it starts to get a little bit constrained up there in terms of the traffic volumes around the loop. But this does meet many of the goals of the project in the same way as the other ones in terms of space for pedestrian lighting, sidewalk separation from the roadway, et cetera. And then another sub-alternative we also looked at, we'll need to go into a lot of detail on this, but kind of just different configuration with the bike lanes, putting them on one side, kind of continuing from the existing greenway on the south end of the corridor around the North Oconee River, and continuity kind of as a facility on the same side of the road going up to the existing shared use path that's already there on Danielsville Road as well.
Those pictures of bigger trees.
Right, may have just been zoomed in.
I've heard that, right?
Right. So now we're going to zoom in on the area around the loop. So as Ronnie mentioned, there were some changes that we found out about regarding GDOT's plans for these bridges. Initially the goal was for the bridges to be replaced and that replacement would add a path for biking and walking along the bridge. To move this project forward, we need to be able to identify something in case that doesn't come through by the time the project is constructed. We don't want to leave a gap here. We need to have some way to make a connection through that interchange area across the bridge. Some options could be things like a separate pedestrian bridge, or modifying an existing bridge. Those can tend to cost a lot of money and may not work well with future plans to replace the bridges, that they may either get in the way or be costs that would then be lost when it comes time to replace the bridges. So one option that we looked at here was looking at repurposing one of the existing lanes in the southbound direction for that biking and walking facility, kind of a shared use path through there. You can see there is a pretty big imbalance here between the northbound traffic, 12,750 vehicles a day versus southbound traffic, 5,300. That's not reflective of the whole corridor. Like I said, it's fairly balanced. That difference is really just kind of a factor of the way that the interchange ramps here are laid out. They just, the way the ramps all dump traffic in different directions just puts a lot more traffic on the northbound bridge versus the southbound bridge. So we anticipate that there would really not be any major delay differences removing that southbound direction versus if you did it on the northbound direction, you most likely would see some significant delays for traffic. So that is what we're showing here. You've got a buffer between the biking and walking area and the travel lanes through here.
So Jonathan, real quick, thank you for making that point. So these numbers are extremely associated with the bridge. And when you go further into town, the numbers are fairly balanced.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. Now, also, y'all ran a model, correct? To come up with these numbers and to determine.
We collected traffic data, built vehicles on the corridor to see what the existing traffic is out there.
Okay. When you guys were collecting traffic data and you came up with this, did you guys contemplate the new development that was going to occur on this corridor?
Great question. We did. So we ran some planning level models. I guess I should have said yes. We both collected existing traffic and we've run planning level models, taking the existing traffic and projecting it out, growing it over 20 years after the project opens. And that includes really the historical growth rate on the corridor is pretty negligible, but we just to be conservative, added a little bit more growth rate, anticipating some of the developments like you mentioned, that are proposed along the corridor or that aren't even proposed yet, but the types of developments that we would anticipate seeing as Athens continues to expand in this direction along North Avenue. So you're right. The future traffic is what I'm talking about. Really existing traffic, one lane in each direction would maybe be pushing it a little bit out here. But when I'm talking about no longer handling the traffic capacity that we would expect there, I'm talking about the future traffic that we projected out based on future developments, population trends in Athens. Great question.
Yes. So here we are again, similar to the Atlanta highway situation with a big old road and stuff only on one side. And I'm looking at this one. So what does this project do for like helping people get from the other side to there on either side of the bridge?
Right. That's a great question as well. People who want to get from one side of the road to the other. So I'll show that. Let's come back to that when we show kind of the top down view.
The crosswalks.
Right. Because that is a challenge. And I think in an ideal world, you would have a sidewalk on both sides here. But given the constraints we have, this seems like a very good interim solution and fingers crossed, it would be excellent if things change and the bridges are able to be replaced, in time for this project to open.
Because to Commissioner Wright's point, like I do see, striping for a crosswalk or whatever, but striping for a crosswalk with that many lanes and this sort of, I forget what it's called now, the automatic right turn lane. What do you call that? Slip lane. Okay, slip lane is, not a very safe crossing, I guess, right? So it's a bunch of lanes, slip lane. I guess when we get to that slide, you can help me understand it.
Yeah, I get your point because you have to know where you're coming and going from to know I better cross now if I want to maintain or it's where the bridge is skinny. If I stay on this lane side with the skinny sidewalk, then there's going to be playing chicken about halfway through the bridge.
I would have made this negative comments, but sort of a benefit of having both the lane reduction on the bridge on the southbound side, as well as having the multimodal path kind of on the southbound end, is that you've captured most of the multifamily on that side of the street. So if you think about what I still think of sort of the new builds like Campus Lodge, and if you think about the historical duplexes on Sunny Hills Drive and Freeman Drive, you're putting the infrastructure where those people are.
Correct. But that assumes, that assumes that everybody in like Highland Greens crosses up where they are. And more importantly, that assumes that all this land right near the loop stays exactly like it is for the next 20 years. And there's no new development that might drive people.
Invariably, there's no perfect solution. I think is noted. At some point, we hope to see this whole thing replaced. But as that interim solution, this makes sense to me.
I think keying in on that word interim, right? That we know that we have to get something that gets people safely across now, but knowing that there's absolutely room for improvement, even if we're still waiting decades for a bridge replacement, we can still, this can still be the great jump off point for a pedestrian bridge on the other side, right? So we can add to this, keep pushing GDOT to do a full bridge replacement. But in the meantime, this is our interim kind of low cost solution to get some safe crossing where there is none today.
Okay.
And I guess, Nikki and I guess with you guys, were talking about North Avenue and 106 and the 106 and Daniels, which we've all decided is different. And so when we talk about Highland Greens, really, maybe that is a project of a TSPLOST project to continue some of this work, because technically, after you pass that loop immediately, there is a sign that says Danielsville, because I looked for it. It's real small, but it is not North Avenue. It is not North Avenue. And I think that has been a learning curve for me. So everything you're presenting today is up to North Avenue. It is not picking up 106 Daniels.
To your point, yes, future TSPLOST or a TAP grant through the state, absolutely things to consider. And we are getting those better signage soon for you too.
Oh, okay.
All right, great.
All right, and then finally, looking at on the other end, the bridge over the North Oconee River. As Ronnie mentioned, the scope on this project was initially included replacing this bridge as well. Based on some of those streamlining things for the project schedule, we are looking at ways to use existing space on this bridge. In this staff preferred alternative here, we're not proposing removing any of the existing lanes, just finding a few of those feet that we can repurpose from those lanes, still provide adequate width for buses, trucks, everybody else who needs to use the bridge, while also repurposing that to have a separated and buffered biking and walking path, at least on one side of the bridge. So what we're showing here is really leaving the existing sidewalk on the east side as is. And this may change someday when the bridge is replaced in the future. But as far as kind of an interim solution for this project, leaving the east sidewalk as is, reconstructing a part of the bridge deck, not total bridge reconstruction, but reconstructing part of the deck over here on the west side to provide a little bit wider space so that people can safely bike and walk across the bridge, connecting from the existing greenway connections on the south side of the bridge, all the way up to the greenway on the north side, and all the way up to the proposed rest of the North Avenue corridor here.
Carol?
Yeah, on this is, the far side, I guess, is the north side, right? So on the, so that section of the greenway right to the right there, isn't that in the hopper for being built? That part between.
We just looked at concept review for that.
On that there. So I just want to, the connection I want to make sure is smooth, because it's one of the most unsmooth connections right now. As someone who rides on there, I always like I'm coming across, but to get to the greenway right there on the other side of here, like if you're going along Hay Drive there. Anyway, there's like nowhere to, it's all, that's a very dangerous intersection there for me to get over into that. So I hope that'll.
What we would hope for is certainly between this project and the coming Greenway segment parallel to MLK between North Avenue and East Broad Street, we'd see a pretty significant intersection.
And I would imagine that Greenway will be done before this is done. That Greenway section, don't you think? This one's fast track.
I think
This is fast track.
quicker, but
Be about the same, probably pretty close to the same time, yeah.
Okay, but then again, if you were coming down from North Avenue down the hill, let's say you're coming down there and you were gonna get on the Greenway turning right towards College Avenue. Again, that connection of coming down across and being able to get on the sidewalk. You know, I just want to make sure that's all there. If you're putting all this work in here.
Yep, definitely the final touches has not been done yet.
Right.
You know, we're very high level concept now. As you will see today in the concept layout, this is work in progress. The designers really worked late nights to get this together so we can meet this deadline. We continue the effort and we are working around the clock.
Right.
So forgive us if the concept is not what you usually see in the next slides. Usually have more details, but definitely good point, Commissioner. We will make sure.
It's a dangerous place.
Yeah, questions.
Well, I just wanted to say that I appreciate, well, the 11-foot travel lane. A lot of people are not comfortable staying within the lanes and they try to, if there's something they want to veer out. So I appreciate that the 10-foot lane can veer towards the left, the turning lane versus being snug over by where the alternative path is. And I also wanted to make sure those balusters are serious kind. They're not the kind, yeah.
Not the flex post.
They're not, yeah, okay. For that same reason. Thank you.
All right, I think we can go ahead and move on now. So we're going to look now at kind of a top-down view. I think, you know, like Ronnie said, we haven't gotten into the minutia of designing individual intersections at this point, but just kind of taking broad brushstrokes look at how some of these sections that we just looked at fit along the corridor. And so again, we're looking at Willow Street up to Freeman Drive, Collins Industrial Boulevard. We'll also be specifically looking at the loop area where we'll be analyzing the idea of using a roundabout at one of those intersections to accomplish some of these goals. I'll go into more detail on that when we get up there. So starting at the south end of the corridor, and you see the north arrow here, north is to the right and up a little bit. So to the left is sort of toward downtown Athens. To the right is toward the northern end of the corridor. So just to orient you to kind of our legend here, the orange lines here represent a proposed shared use path. And again, this is the staff preferred alternative that we're going to be showing all the way through here. The orange lines represent the proposed shared use path. Green is kind of buffer space or raised median space. Gray that you see kind of along here is proposed sidewalk. The kind of, I think you can kind of tell what the road is, probably the kind of dark color in the middle there. And we have existing traffic signals are shown with these little icons right here. And see if there's anything else. And then high tension transmission poles, these kind of red dots that you see at some locations, just to give you a feel for kind of their proximity to the road and the back of the sidewalk in some places that we're trying to work within and not impact. So again, what this does on this end, we tie to existing shared use path here along the Greenway as it follows Willow Street, as well as making space within the intersection to try to more seamlessly tie in the existing shared use path here. I know the other project that was mentioned, extending the Greenway, is pretty early on as well, but I know we'll have opportunities to coordinate with that project on making sure that the tie-ins here are all as logical and easy to use as we can. And so this, you know, is kind of this steep area that we've talked about as the road climbs up away from the river.
Vivi had a question about this end of the.
Actually, I would like to go to the slide before the slide. Yes. Because on that slide, maybe I just was not paying attention. Maybe I was whispering with my colleague. Is it, I did not hear us talk more about the idea of round.
And I'm going to get into that a few slides from now when we kind of zoom in on that area, if that's okay.
Okay, so this slide that I'm looking at, you're going to explain later on. Okay.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead. Yeah, we can just, again, don't look at this as a final design. Some of the things that are not shown here yet that we will be drilling into a lot more are specifics of intersection design. The lanes around the intersections could change a little bit. Opportunities for mid-block pedestrian crossings. Those are all important parts of the project that are very important, but don't have as much of an overall impact on the footprint, which is kind of what what needs to be nailed down earlier on. So again, kind of broad brushstrokes painting the preferred alternative typical section through the project area. And taking us all the way up to Old Hole Road and North Crest Drive up here. And so now, well, we do have two kind of sub-alternatives that we are looking at around the interchange area that we think are both viable. First, I'll talk about some of the commonalities and then I'll show what some of the differences are. Commonalities are we are looking at roundabouts here, a roundabout intersection to kind of tie together some of these existing ramps. You can see kind of underneath here, there's an existing off ramp from the loop right here. There's an existing off ramp that loops around like this. And then there's an on ramp that kind of feeds in from two directions right here. So we have some kind of non-standard intersections going on in this area. We have some crash patterns in this area. And so a roundabout creates a few different opportunities. One would be creating a gateway as drivers are entering the Athens area from Danielsville Road from the north and have this opportunity to see the context change, have the opportunity to be welcomed into Athens by a landscaped roundabout and also kind of have the clues given to them that you're entering a different area. You're not in a higher speed, more rural context on Danielsville Road. You're entering more urban and suburban context. And then these also have great safety benefits in terms of cleaning up the numbers of conflict points at intersections. We're running short on time. I think I'm being.
Yes, and when I want to say something, it's we're not perfect. So we realized when we put this presentation together that this slide may be a little confusing. And we would like to talk about this on the next slide, if you don't mind. And we can come back to here and tell you the differences, and specifically with those orange lines that shows a multi-use path. But the real alternative, the true alternative that we are supporting as staff is the next page, which is 1B. This alternative is a little bit more costly, we believe, because it realigns the on and off ramps for the outer loop. So with that being said, Jonathan, I'll let you continue, but we haven't had time to talk about this in depth.
Great, thank you. So right, similarities. So they both show that same interim solution of repurposing space on this southbound bridge right here. Like Ronnie alluded to, really the main differences are how you maintain that continuity between the path users and just people who want to walk or bike safely through the interchange area. To an earlier point about people need to cross the street, they do. So both of these opportunities allow an opportunity for that. In the first one that I showed, there's the roundabout provides crosswalks in every direction so that whichever side of the road you start out on the south side, you can make your way across. This alternative specifically has, and this may be a little bit confusing, but has using the existing grade separation of the bridges to move the path kind of underneath the bridges, loop back around to the top, cross, loop around and come under here. So some of the advantages here, in the future, if you replace the bridges and you have a path on this side of the bridge to kind of continue with the side that the existing Danielsville path is already on over here, you have that continuity there. Downsides with kind of the interim stage before that may be, just out of direction travel that you're expecting the path users to follow there. And then the benefits of this one right here, you do need to use either the roundabout or the existing traffic signal here to move from one side of the road to the other. But once you get to sort of this west side over here near the top of the screen, you're teed up with the whole path going along the west side over here. You don't have the kind of looping situation underneath the bridges, and you do have kind of consolidated and less sort of sweeping, speed encouraging sorts of ramps here. So that's a quick highlight of the differences there. And that takes us through our preferred alternative presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Ronnie to
Thank you
for us.
All right, last slide here, we're showing you our tentative schedule as we work very hard with our state and you all and state elected officials working with the federal government to see ways to extend the obligation date. Like I said, the current schedule is in front of you. The current cost estimate for this project is shown here. We'll take questions at this point.
Got a couple of questions. Patrick, Dexter, Jeffy.
I prefer to hear from Thornton about, this is her district. Do you have any questions?
The questions that I have, I raised on Friday. And I do think that I'm going to wait. There's going to be the, public input session.
Yes.
I'm waiting for that. I do have concerns about, narrowing the street, the street. I did express that on Friday. And I want to make sure I understand how the roundabout is going to function. But it does look different than when I looked on Friday. So I can see the two entrances. So I'm going to, Patrick, I'm going to be participating in or listening at the input session. I don't put a lot of weight into the online questionnaires and surveys because most people who is affected, they don't do that. So hopefully with the postcards going out, you'll get some good turnout. But the only concerns I have now is about narrowing the road and trying to make sure I got that concept about the.
First of all, thank y'all.
Thank you.
I do have several questions. Y'all just bear with me. Like this slide, I get the sidewalks in the roundabout, but okay, I'm gonna get up.
Sure.
Come on, Patrick, get on up. Get on up, Patrick.
Professor Patrick.
Come on, Patrick.
But like, I just have concerns about trucks coming off from the loop, making this turn, but it's kind of, in this intersection right here, where if you got pedestrian crossing, okay, let me make sure I got this right. So like the traffic flow coming from here, it makes more sense if you move this over here because you got the light there. That's just a concern and, you know, the engineers can explain that. But, people crossing at this intersection, because you got people coming from here and just, it just seems very dangerous to me. But if you got sidewalks on both sides, just eliminate one of the sidewalks here. So, maybe easier for the traffic to understand like, hey, people gonna cross here. Or just eliminate the crosswalks here, just leave them there. What else do I got? Oh, and here. So if you're going from here, from 2 lanes down to 1 lane, but then you have this oncoming traffic from the loop, then it goes to 1 lane here, then back to 2 lane. I'm just wondering why that.
I don't believe is it going to 2 lanes at that point? Right there
I
to
think
the
what you're
south?
seeing is the beginning of a left turn lane. It is kind of cut off on the page approaching the Old Hall Road intersection. And those are all great points that we'll consider as we get into more detailed design.
These are great points, Commissioner. I believe there is a lot more engineering that need to go in here. The current conditions are dangerous as they are without putting any bike or ped on this project. Just a little background on this location. GDOT did work with the University of Georgia graduate students, senior design students, engineering students, and identified this is one of the most crashes on loop bridges, rear end specifically. So we're sure GDOT's gonna love this and feel good about approaching them. And this is just a sketch. This is literally little paintbrush trying to bring ideas to the table for GDOT to approve. Now, the one thing I'd like to mention is that GDOT gave us an opportunity that they don't give this to many local governments. They said, bring us a project charter, we'll sign off. What is a project charter is what you see right now. It's not very detailed. We're gonna leave a lot of the details for later just to give us this kind of jump to go into engineering and design and to meet obligation date as we know it.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Coming south, coming from the mall, going towards Old Hall Road. So is there a turning lane coming off Loop 10 back onto North Avenue? Yeah.
Like that. This one will be closed and now all traffic will be taken this. So if they're going north, they go this way. They go south, they go this way. And this is the most dangerous rear end location.
That leg on the bottom is gone.
Yes, this cloverleaf movement going north is eliminated. There's no more access there will be no more access. And these two right here, these will be gone.
Use the roundabout. too.
Yes, the roundabout.
So just still, I understand the traffic, I'm willing, the smart people behind the room do the engineering. So if everybody's just using that one loop, it's gonna add a lot of pressure. If I'm coming south, just using that one lane and it narrows right there, right behind the loop, or right before the roundabout, then goes to a turning lane.
Very, very good point, Commissioner. And I would say this is a very high level. We don't know if this is gonna be a one lane or multi-lane or kind of hybrid. But we sure will do the ICE analysis, which is intersection control analysis, and identify the width and number of approaches, the radii for each curve and curvature, making sure that the design speeds are low. A roundabout like this, the design speed is about 20 miles per hour or less. And also the roadway design is 35 miles per hour. So that should give us plenty of safety, much better safety than what we have today. And a placemaking.
Real quick, I just like the design better. I do support the bike lanes on North Avenue. We have some questions about the 3 lanes, and I hate this, and I know Carol gonna beat me up for saying this, but it just, the bike lanes on North Avenue, they go nowhere. They end right at Willow Street. That's very dangerous. Like the next bike lane is going to be Prince Avenue. So you're literally dumping bikes unless they go to the Greenway. But are there any future plans on addressing that?
Of course, as you probably know, we're working on updating our Athens in motion plans. And so that, when a project like this becomes real, then it prioritized a segment that what we call gap, and now it will be a higher priority, and that would be one of our top priorities.
Again, I'm sorry.
That's my only.
Again, I don't think that, I really do want to get the concept that we need to get, like have now, or, and I think there's a whole nother conversation on to make sure we understand and appreciate the direction we're going with bikes and bike lanes. I think that Commissioner Fisher, I think Commissioner Fisher hit it right on the head. We build these bike lanes. I really want to see what that traffic looks like, not what we anticipate what it's going to look like if we build it. And the best example I can give you is the bike lanes we have on Rock Spring Street. Nobody rides that bike lane. It goes nowhere. And it goes right into Broad Street. The car and the bike have the same lane. And I think that we need to start looking at, I know we got to anticipate bikes. I get it. I'm not against bikes. But let's deal with what we know we have the numbers for and go from there. That's my thought. But again, I have no recommendations or support one way, and I'm gonna wait until after the impulse.
Got Dexter and Jesse on staff, and then we'll wrap.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I got 2 questions. I got heard earlier that it might have been a little bit, our funding cut a little bit.
Yes, in the amount of $152,000.
Okay, so, and I was looking at your breakdown, and I guess my biggest concern is the deadline that we're facing. Yeah, you may be able to address it, but, and I know when I went to DC back in December, we talked off about that, I had to look into that, and I know other communities are dealing with that. Do we feel comfortable if we don't get the extension that we can complete the project?
Yes, we are at a high risk. We know that without an obligation date extension, we are at a high risk of having to cancel and to retract. However, we have other communities who have been able to extend their obligation date. Raise 2021 have extended their obligation date, working with their delegates. And that's what we are doing. We are communicating with recipients of calendar 22 or fiscal year 22 raise. And we've received feedback that other communities are experiencing the same thing we are. And there's an appetite on the state level, on elected officials' radar. They know this is a reality, and we continue to work. Now once you approve this, once we know you are in support, we have more power to go and say, our elected officials have voted. This concept is approved. We spent that much money out of our own pocket to meet the deadline. You've taken 2 years to get a grant agreement signed. So, we can talk with confidence more once you all have blessed us every step of the way. So that's why it's important. And let me just mention one thing. Without a roadway diet, we really cannot meet the obligation date. Even if we extend the obligation date, there is another date that's looming around, which is the expenditure date, which is right now, it's September 2031. So if we take our time in design, we don't give ourselves enough time to build it, we will lose the grant or part of the grant. So that's where, yes, we would extend the obligation, but we're still under pressure to deliver this project.
Well, and just to be clear there, Ronnie, you said without a roadway diet, we would not meet the obligation. Without moving the project forward, we would not be able to meet the obligation.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate that. My point, I probably lost it there, but so my point is without roadway diet, without taking advantage of the right of way we have somehow and build multimodal facility, like a multi-use path, wider sidewalks, buffers, we cannot meet the goals of the project that we have committed ourselves to. If we decide to maintain 5 lanes of traffic, the only other way is to impact right of way. That means we need more time, which we don't have. An extension of time won't even do it. That's the reality that we live in. Thank you.
And on the question of the extension, we benefit, as Ronnie noted, from the prior year's recipients having received an extension nationwide, and from the other major project in this class of projects being the City of Atlanta's 5 Points MARTA station upgrade that was at about the same dollar amount. And so we have contact with Atlanta's intergovernmental affairs team so that we can kind of go to the feds together and our obviously representatives and senators and administrative staff out of the White House. So I feel cautiously optimistic about that.
Thank you all.
I think Jesse had a question, and then I just have a couple of
A question and then a thought. So my question is, I guess we could go back to like slide 17 roughly, with the alternatives that show like the 3 lanes versus 4. And I just want to understand, $25 million is a massive grant. I mean, it's unprecedented, I think, for this county to get. Most communities in Georgia are wondering how the heck we did it. So this is like a huge opportunity for us. And like you said, the point of it is to create more safety by doing some kind of road diet. Did I hear correctly that the traffic analysis supported 3 lanes for part of it, that it was other stakeholders that pushed back against that? But this
Stakeholders such as fire, police.
Major reason, major.
Okay. Fire and police, like for the purposes of thinking they wouldn't be able to get through despite the middle lane, or I guess I'm just trying to understand how the traffic analysis supported that. And then this kind of aligns with what the raise grant is premised on. And obviously fewer lanes is safer, is kind of the point, right? So like, what was the rationale that's keeping us from having this as the staff recommendation? That's just what I'm trying to understand.
So what's keeping us from having this as a recommendation, first is event traffic. Second is emergency evacuation traffic. And last is that the traffic, as you get closer to the bridge, and specifically on the bridge, it doubles. And while if we do this for the entire corridor, except for the bridge over the loop, we cannot do this for the bridge over the loop for the northbound traffic. There's a lot of, the count there is more than double. So it's not really apples to apples, north to south, once you get to that point, Old Hall and beyond. So these are the main 3 things that as staff, and based on the feedback we got from the stakeholders, is that we didn't feel comfortable that this alternative is serving the community at large. Now, what we did with the 4-lane alternative, the recommended alternative, is that we reduced the travel lanes from 12 plus feet to 11 feet. 10 feet on the inner lane moving north, and then another 11 and another 11, meaning we reduced the width of the lanes. We're also designing the road for a lower speed. Today, the road is designed as you see, it's very open, very inviting. There's no buffer with, next to the sidewalk or between the sidewalk and traffic, and therefore vehicular movement tend to be faster. So we will design the alternative with that in mind, is to make sure that the design speed is 35, giving the impression or that forces the driver to drive slower rather than faster, closer to the speed limit rather than faster. But these are the reasons.
Thanks. I guess what I'm still missing here, sorry, is like closer to the loop, seems like the extra lane might be needed for that northbound traffic. But for the rest of this project, the huge part of it that's inside the loop,
sure,
why not be the 3-lane version up until that 4th lane is needed?
There's 2 hills, one is steeper than the other, and both hills, emergency services expressed major concerns going uphill. Most of their service calls are going out of town, not coming to town. So going out of town on these hills, vehicle stops when they hear sirens. And if there's somebody in the turn lane, they get nowhere to go. Going uphill, they need that, because if they stop, they can't pick up again. They're heavy vehicles to go up the hill. And there's 2 hills. So that was one, kind of scenario that walked us through. The other one, like I said, event traffic, which was not considered in the traffic analysis. Traffic analysis look at 2 things, either peak hours or average daily traffic. And the study we did so far is the average daily traffic. That's an average over the entire day. And that gives us an average of delays over the entire days, not necessarily on peak hours. So we know, based on the current hourly traffic and the peak hour traffic, northbound with 1 lane will experience delays that people will call you and complain. That's one thing. But we could not say that on an average for the entire day that there will be delays where people will be calling you at 10:30 in the morning. But 8 o'clock, I'm sorry, in the afternoon. But like, for example, 8 o'clock in the evening, northbound traffic at the peak hour at between 4 and 5 is a little bit higher than the south at the 6 a.m. peak hour. And therefore, the northbound has a little bit slightly higher traffic. But in terms of average, they're almost the same.
Okay. Thank you. I guess my parting thought is just, I'm hearing from colleagues the reluctance to like remove lanes. And I understand that. To remove more lanes, right? So like wanting to stick with the 4 and 3 kind of thing. And so, and I heard from Mr.
DeJoya?
Yes. Yeah, I wrote it down. I even looked you up on the little LinkedIn, but I have too many tabs here. That the mid-block crossings is part of the design that would come later because that doesn't necessarily affect the overall footprint. But I'm guessing that with more lanes to get across, it's going to be that much more expensive to make a safe mid-block crossing. And why I want to emphasize that at this stage is if we're working within a finite amount of money and we're going to end up keeping more lanes, which means that they're inherently more dangerous to cross, that we're making sure we're reserving enough funding to actually provide safe crossings so that whatever facilities we build can actually be accessed by people who just going about their lives will have to cross the road. So that's, I just hope that somewhere in this concept, there is room for that to still be in the budget, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I'm worried that we can't use the roundabout.
Y'all just come get me. And I guess I hear what Jesse's saying, but it wasn't just me about the 4 lanes. I've talked to constituents and some of the stakeholders. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, as we do our land use plan and as we move forward, TSPLOST is going to be coming back around by the time we get this off the ground. TSPLOST, we may go into another. So we can't anticipate that we are not going to be able to address what's coming up later based on this. I think this was never meant, as big as that those numbers are, this was never meant to fix all of North Avenue and Danielsville. It's not enough. I do expect that there's going to be other monies. We just got to make sure that we have a transitional or continual plan on moving forward.
And just wrapping, I absolutely agree that I think this also sets us up for some future projects. you know, what are we eventually going to do between Willow Street and Doherty Street, for example? That's a question that we're going to have to deal with in the future. But we know that this community has consistently supported those kind of connecting projects. I just want to say, I really appreciate the very creative work that y'all have done within the public right of way. I mean, really, y'all have worked magic to make this happen. I'm supportive of the 4-lane roadway with multi-use path on the Four Tigers side of the road, as I would call it. And also like the slightly cleaner movement over the loop, just in terms of the design alternatives you provided, and will give another pitch toward as substantial a tree canopy and buffer area between the vehicular roadway and the biking paths as possible.
And I reiterate what the mayor said, and I know sometimes the trees seem like an extra thing, but whether or not it's cycling or walking, those trees are essential. I mean, those trees are essential, and you think you don't like know it, you know, you guys know that I'm on my bike. Sometimes I don't even think about it, but I'm like, should I go on this road or that way? Where is there gonna be shade? So, I mean, and if I were walking, forget Barnett Shoals, right? It'd be like, you know, I can be on it for a while, but those trees and getting enough trees, like not having that be an afterthought. We gotta make sure there's enough shade for all those nice facilities when we used, and even worse for walking.
And I hope that when the mayor mentioned Four Tigers, which is not there no more, and I love that store. That whole shopping area needs to get almost a hand invite for your meeting. I would not chance it now.
Go to the cash register at every one of those.
Yeah, go to cash register and put it down when you pay for the stuff. That is going to be so impactful. And I really I'd rather hear from them on the front end than the back end.
Yes, Commissioner Thornton, for that note, there is flyers, they will go out, we will distribute those, we will have the art signs. We have set up also a voice message to respond to any Spanish speaking residents, if they prefer to do so. We can also have translators at the public meeting. Yes, thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate you coming. All right, we are gonna move on. Does anyone want a short break?
Yes.
No. All right, so take your individual break if you need it. But beyond that, Suki Janssen is gonna come and she's gonna talk to us about residential collection in the unified government of Athens-Clarke.
I'll live up here. LGOC. Carol, how many? 5 meetings? LRC, 5 meetings? Patrick? Professor, I'm glad you're here.
It's different in the evening.
Solid waste advisory.
I guess we are taking a break. Are we not?
We can forge ahead, they'll catch up.
All right. Well, this week we'll go for it.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Y'all know who I am. I'm here to talk trash. I'm here specifically to talk about residential collection in Athens-Clarke County. The purpose, we'll go over it here in just a second. The purpose, why franchise, or the opportunities that franchising can present to our community. History, where we've been, current solid waste collection in Athens-Clarke County. This is again just residential sector. Comparative analysis of similar areas, cost estimate, and then franchising concerns that we've heard from residents in the past and currently, and then a summary. Today, we're going to share an overview. I'm going to share an overview of existing solid waste collection in Athens-Clarke County and opportunities to improve service. I think it's part of my job as a solid waste director to always bring forward opportunities for you all to look at in solid waste, whether it's innovation, technology, or just opportunities that other communities have experienced. Why franchise? Here we go. Why consider franchising for residential collection? Sorry, y'all. Trying to get there on this sheet of paper. We're going to cover some of the opportunities that franchising gives to us. First one is, since the county and the city combined back in the 90s, solid waste it's not equitable. The urban service district residents have to have trash service and have to have Athens-Clarke County solid waste. And the general service district residents do not have to have trash service at all and can choose from multiple haulers. So this franchising would present same level service and consistent rates for the entire community. So we would be more equitable than we are currently. It also provides opportunities for enhanced levels of service at a reduced cost or similar cost. And you'll see later in this presentation, many communities bundle more services than what we currently have. You could have containerized weekly leaf and limb service. You could have bulky waste weekly service, both of which we don't have currently in Athens-Clarke County. You could even have street sweeping. We saw in one community that bundles these residential services. So enhanced levels of service at a reduced or similar cost, reduced frequency of trucks from multiple haulers in neighborhoods. So there's a lot of environmental benefits, but I do want to tell you the largest greenhouse gas contributor by sector is the transportation industry, 29%. And that includes solid waste trash trucks. And I'm going to tell you the bottom of the pile for miles per gallon in that group are trash trucks. We get less than 5 gallons per mile. So the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions could be realized if we had less haulers in the communities. All garbage trucks leak over time, and they leak out leachate, which is garbage juice, just everything that y'all put in the trash mixed together. Road wear and tear, examples, Sandy Springs just passed not too long in infrastructure. They don't have franchise hauling. They allow, though, for a specific number of haulers. They added an infrastructure cost to all haulers because they know that these trash trucks coming in and out of communities cause real wear and tear on our roads. And then traffic, additional traffic from trash trucks presents noise issues in communities and beyond. Expanded capacity of the landfill. Often when you have less haulers with more consistent messaging, providing the same services, you can realize an expansion in capacity of the landfill due to higher waste reduction or recycling rates. And that's what we hope to see if we did franchise. Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just that wording, expand the capacity of the landfill. You worded it. It sounded like you were expanding.
Oh, let's say the extended life, better waste reduction efforts. Sorry, thank you. Yes, thank you. That was a little uncomfortable, I guess, that saying that. I don't want anybody to think we're expanding the landfill any further than what we've already been approved to do in phase 5. Reduction in illegal dumping and litter. When communities have franchised or gained better control over private haulers, they have realized less illegal dumping. And we do have a considerable amount of legal dumping, which we'll specifically talk about in the next slide. Also, service theft is high in Athens, and service theft is especially on the east side. For example, we have a lot of apartment complexes on the east side that don't have a gated community. They can't either afford it or it's not maybe what they consider necessary. You see mattresses and couches and trash just overflowing out of their dumpsters. And if you ask a lot of them will tell you, because they have done their own research, that that's not from their own community members. They'll have other folks coming in and what we call stealing service from them, dumping their own trash in those dumpsters. Also ensuring a standard level of customer service from private haulers. In Athens, we kind of go through cycles of having good customer service or great from some haulers and really terrible customer service from some haulers. And there's really not much we can do about that. There's nothing besides really some heavier franchising where we can have accountability measures dictated through an RFP process and have a contract in place to help with customer service. And then, of course, we do have folks that will stockpile their trash in the back of their pickup trucks, under their carports, and that is a real issue with vectors, rats, mice, cockroaches. And so we would prefer folks not stockpile so that they can just make one trip to the landfill. So these are some of the reasons that we would like to present franchising to you for consideration. And one that's kind of near and dear to my department's heart is illegal dumping, you all. We have seen an increase in illegal dumping, probably threefold in the last eight years. Right before COVID, it got so bad that we started, keep Athens-Clarke County beautiful, being the we part of the solid waste department, started the Litter Abatement Steering Committee. And that's a group of government entities, nonprofits that come together quarterly to speak to how we can reduce illegal dumping in our community. So one of the first tasks we did as that entity was we tried to calculate how much Athens-Clarke County spends on illegal dumping each year. And we spend about $900,000 a year, and that was prior to COVID. So we haven't updated that number yet. Part of the reason you all actually contributed money to another program we have, the Illegal Dumping Prevention and Surveillance Program, was because we came to you and showed you how much we were spending across the government on illegal dumping and litter pickup. So in 2021, we started the Illegal Dumping and Prevention and Surveillance Program, and that cost us about $28,000 annually after the capital cost of about $36,000 to purchase cameras. And since the implementation of this program in March of 2023, we have actually caught and sent up to code enforcement to take further to court over 225 illegal dumpers across our community. Now, have we caught more than 225? Yes, but we know we can't send them all up to code enforcement. They don't have the capacity to handle it, nor do the courts or our attorney's office actually have the capacity to handle the sheer quantity of folks that we catch. So we try to triage. Our part-time staff member that actually handles this program for us, he only sends the ones up that he knows that we have solid evidence that code enforcement will need to pursue the citation. And the citation averages about $300, the fine for the citation averages about $300. Coupled with that, we've given out over 100 warning letters. Could we give out more? Certainly we could. There's often not enough time in the day. And these warning letters, again, are maybe we don't have exactly what we need in the cameras to send up for an actual citation. So we work with the police department in this case, and they send a letter to the person that has placed something on the side of the road or at our drop-off sites or at a dumpster location to educate them and to make sure they know they're being watched. And we know that they have placed something on the ground that shouldn't be there. And then service theft, which I mentioned in the last slide, is a real apartment complex issue here around Athens. If you speak to some of the apartment complex owners, especially on the east side, they will tell you that they have hundreds of people usually coming in and illegally dumping in their dumpsters or around their dumpsters that they and or their tenants have to pay for and as part of their rent. And so that's part of what we consider illegal dumping. We have tried to help some of those folks. It's a little harder to catch folks in some of those areas. What we have found, sometimes camera placement is a little harder in some of those dumpster areas. So we haven't had any success helping some of those private entities catch some of that illegal dumping. But we certainly have tried, and we hope to be able to help curb some of that activity for them. But we feel like when franchising, we don't feel like, we know, we've seen it in other communities, when they have franchising, when they have containerized service offered to all customers, they've seen a decrease in illegal dumping. Where we've been, you can see kind of where we've been. This is not our first time talking about franchising. It is a topic that is very popular to speak to when it comes to your constituents. We know it, trash. People are very vocal about their trash, positively or negatively. So you can just see where we've been for the last several months, from June to October. We've been speaking about franchising in the Legislative Review Committee. Prior to that, the mayor assigned franchising to the LRC committee because the SWAC, the Solid Waste Advisory Commission, recommended franchising to be seriously looked at again. So that's why we're here today. How is trash and recycling currently handled in Athens-Clarke County? We actually have trash in the urban service district and general service district. Again, this is just residential collection. I don't want anybody out there to think that we're gonna do anything in the commercial realm. This is just residential. Urban Service District, the Solid Waste Department, our department, my department, we service 10,000 residential customers roughly from the curb or backyard. And those folks have to have curbside or backyard trash collection. In the General Service District, we have 5 haulers, and you can see them listed there: AAA Sanitation, Curbside Services, Johnson & Son, Republic, and Waste Pro. And they service approximately, or they have the opportunity to service approximately 25,000 residential customers. But those residents do not have to have trash service. They can haul it to the landfill, to a private dumpster, the side of the road, wherever they are inclined to place their trash. Hopefully, most of them are taking it to the landfill where it belongs. But that's what's going on in the residential sector right now in Athens-Clarke County. And just so you can see what we're talking about here, the Urban Service District is the lighter color beige, and then the General Service District. And I like to say it, even though it's not completely accurate, Athens-Clarke County Solid Waste Department basically serves residential customers inside the loop, minus Timothy. That Timothy corridor is not accurate. Over there, we do not serve Timothy Road. Current fees for us, the Athens-Clarke County Solid Waste Department, you can see our fees. We do have a pay-as-you-throw system in Athens-Clarke County, which was instituted in the mid-90s to help divert more material from the landfill and increase recycling. And so we have the opportunity for folks to select a 120-gallon all the way up to, if you're really trashy, multiple 96-gallon containers. And your price is going to go up and with a differential between the 20-gallon all the way up to multiple 96 gallons. You can see our rates right there for service, and those are monthly service fees in the Urban Service District. These are the haulers and their rates. Their rates, you can see in the monthly rates section, often don't include recycling. So you have to look in the comment section to see if you have recycling, that's going to add to the cost. Our rates, I should tell you, I want you to know this because it's confusing for some. Our rates for recycling are embedded in that trash rate. Everybody's paying that recycling rate. The private haulers have their rate. And that rate is for trash service only. And then if they want recycling service, because it's not mandatory, you would tack on often a recycling charge. And that's their current customer base. Every quarter, we have them, they pay a waste minimization fee, they being the haulers. With that waste minimization fee, they have to send in their quarterly reports stating how many customers they have in the residential sector, commercial sector, where their trash goes and where their recycling goes. How is trash, and I think this is the most telling part, you all, when we did this, we know, and I've been in the industry for over 20 years now, and I go and anytime I vacation, I check out how people are dealing with trash. I think my family gets a little upset because they're like looking at landfills, looking at residential roll carts, looking at trash cans. And so anecdotally, I've always seen how other communities handle trash, but until we had staff just recently literally call like-sized communities in Georgia, and then we added Greenville, South Carolina. I don't think I've ever seen it on paper like we have it. So we did a comparative analysis across the state. We compared Athens to Columbus, Greenville, Augusta, Savannah, and Rome. And what we found out is that pretty much all those jurisdictions that we surveyed had curbside and limited backyard service. And they did not allow self-hauling like we do right now, except for, clearly, we're not saying people can't go to the landfill. If you love to see our landfill staff and you want to go out there and empty your garage every week, you'd still be welcome to go to the landfill. But typically, there's no self-hauling except for overages and cleanouts by a residential customer. Rates were up to 45% cheaper with enhanced and additional services is what we found out when these jurisdictions franchised. All jurisdictions that we surveyed offered weekly trash service, just like us, and most offered weekly or biweekly recycling collection. And here in Athens, everybody but Republic offers weekly recycling collection. But every county that we surveyed, just about, offered enhanced services for a reduced price to what we're paying right now. Columbus, Greenville, Augusta, Savannah, and Rome provide weekly bulky and yard waste service in containers. Well, the yard waste service is in a container. That's more than what you all get right now. Macon provides bulky and yard waste in a container bi-weekly. Greenville does everything plus street sweeping in the residential sector as part of their service package as well. Additionally, where we surveyed was a mixture of enterprise and general fund sources. 4 jurisdictions were serviced by the public sector, and 2 were serviced by private sector haulers. All jurisdictions have larger residential customer bases than here in Athens-Clarke County, except for Greenville. I think they had 19,000, and we have about 38,000 in Athens. Columbus, Augusta, Macon, Rome, Savannah, and Athens, we all own our own landfill. That's important because we control tipping fees and we control where material goes. Greenville and Macon do not own their own landfill, so they're at the mercy of either a transfer station or landfills that could be farther away. I'm not saying they are, but they don't have that control over where their material goes necessarily. Columbus and Athens own their own recycling centers. Greenville and Savannah transfer recyclables to Pratt, and just Columbus and Athens have about the same fee on their recycling facility right now. Just to let you know, for inquiring minds, it's about $100 per ton to process recyclables right now at our own facilities. Greenville and Savannah transfer recyclables to Pratt, a private company, at the tune of about $150 per ton to process. Macon transports clean loads of recyclables only to Synergy, a waste-to-energy facility around the Cordele area. Augusta does not. They just stopped recycling in Augusta recently due to costs. So Augusta, that is actually a more recent addition, and they do not recycle currently. All tip and processing fees are in the chart, and I didn't share it this time, but I think you all have seen it before. If not, we'll make sure we do share the comparative analysis, and it's a very nice grid of everything, all the details together that you might want to see based on what we found out. So then what we decided to do was just send to our, you won't know exactly what our costs will be until you send out a RFP if you choose to do so. At that juncture, then you have trash companies compete on giving what they feel like is the best cost estimate they can. But we asked our consultant to run an estimate based on other communities. So we used our potential customer base, again, just residential customer base of approximately 38,000 residential units, and that includes the urban service district and general service district. And we estimated the franchise cost would be probably about 25 to 30 per month for trash and recycling in 96-gallon containers. 64 or 96-gallon containers, you all are average size containers. If you ask our private haulers, probably 64-gallon is, 96 is their average. Ours in the urban service district, most of our customers have 64-gallon containers, just for inquiring minds. So estimated franchise cost, if you wanted to add more services like all the other communities had that we just listed, containerized leaf and limb weekly service would be an additional about 5 to 8 per month. And these are ranges because, again, until you send out a request for proposals, we don't know for sure, but it's estimated based on other communities. And an estimated total for weekly trash, recycling, and leaf and limb collection in 96-gallon carts would be approximately $30 to $38 per month. And this was estimated by Atlantic Coast Consulting, our on-call consultant. So this is just a basic cost analysis for franchising in Athens-Clarke County. Now, have we heard about franchising in the past? Yes, we have. We have been here before because I think, again, it goes back to what I told you before. I heard Commissioner Thornton say streamlining services. This is part of streamlining services. This is part of making sure I am a responsible director by giving you all information about how you can add more services that we get asked to provide to our community, how to do it, and the approximate cost to do it. So here are some of the reasons in the past that we have heard in our department and my neighbors. I live in a community that has, in the general service district, that has haulers in and out of our community every day. Some folks don't mind that, some folks do. So residents do tend to have relationships with their current private haulers, and some of them really have had strong relationships for 10 plus years with their current private haulers. So private haulers Right now, what the Solid Waste Advisory Commission and what LRC talked about is retaining all the private haulers. Now, I'm going to say that retaining all the private haulers we currently have. Even our smallest hauler would be accounted for in this mix. Jimmy Janssen has even been talked to. He is this, what I call a foot packer. They don't have a packing body truck. They have pickup trucks and they use their foot to pack their trash, foot packer. And so therefore, depending on the ward, some residents may be able to maintain their existing relationship. Other residents, if we split the pie up like you should to make us more efficient, some folks would not have their same hauler in the general service district. So we know that residents have relationships with their current private haulers that they really value. Public perception and rejection of eliminating choice has been an issue that they like to bounce between haulers if necessary. So eliminating choice has been vocalized as a concern in the past. Self-hauling, there are some people that love to self-haul. And eliminating self-hauling, although we feel like, and there's evidence to back us up, it will likely reduce illegal dumping and service theft. There are some folks that really enjoy hauling material weekly, bi-weekly to the landfill. And then mandatory trash and recycling service from single-family homes required. This provides consistency for the entire community, we feel, as the urban service district residents are currently mandated to do. And some folks don't want that mandate from mayor, commission, and the service district. And so those have been some of the past discussions when you all have talked about, or your predecessors have talked about franchising in the past. Phew. Try to get through it fast for y'all. I know we already been here a long time, but I will take any questions, concerns. You can go ahead and yell at me, if you would like. I just feel like it's my responsibility to bring forward information about enhancing residential service, like we've seen in other locations.
The chair discourages yelling, but if you indicate, I would be glad to recognize you. Mr. Fisher.
Can I just say something as chair of the LRC? Mayor?
I will.
Is why we came here instead of the reg, just to make it clear.
Go quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say, make it clear that we have what's coming through here. Our recommendation was to have this as a work session and to see what the larger group says here so that we could actually get this out of the public and get more feedback in here rather than putting something where the wording's exactly down and we want to do this. So we wanted the larger discussion here. And in fact, I think will be discussed about, well, this is what we ended up with, making a recommendation for having this presented. And then if decided the very first step, we include this in here in the next.
Yes, we did. You know what? I thought it was the end. I wasn't, sorry.
No,
You know what? I was too excited. Here it is. And you know what? You didn't tee me up though.
Right, I keep up on this.
You know what? I was too excited, I thought I was done. I'm not. You are right. You teed me up, Commissioner Myers. Thank you. LRC franchising summary. It was to hire a consultant and a consultant just to construct an RFP if that's what you all choose. We know that there'll be HOA legal issues because we have HOAs that have solid contracts with private haulers currently. Also, contracts would have to be created for the haulers after the RFP process, and then some general administration for franchising at a cost of approximately $100,000. That's what the consultant would do specifically for franchising. Also, the LRC did say they want to keep the 5 total zones with the current haulers that we have, 1 zone to be served by solid waste, and then 4 by the other franchisees or the permitted haulers currently. Mandatory residential collection service, so no self-hauling, exception for cleanups or bulky items. And they would like to see an incorporation of a low-income fee reduction. Columbus, when we did the exploratory comparative analysis, thank you. We found in Columbus, they actually had a fee reduction in their monthly service for low-income folks. Consideration of incorporation of other services like containerized leaf and limb that I discussed, food scrap pickup, and bulky waste.
And Suki, real quick, on the 5 zones, folks would bid on the zones, correct?
Correct.
how do you ensure, so if there's 5 zones, we do one of them. There's at least 4 zones, but yet there's 5 existing haulers.
One current, the foot packer, he would not be able to do as his current infrastructure allows, but I think there's some other haulers that wanted to partner with him. He'd be a subcontractor, correct? He could.
I guess I'm trying to think of other discussions we had about minority participation in business here in Athens. So you'd be eliminating businesses basically.
I don't know that he would be eliminated. I think there would be concessions potentially made for him to be a subcontractor with one of the other haulers that have trucks that actually are already in our ordinance for that should be used on the road. So he would be partnering with other haulers to do that. He's discussed that before with actually some of the current private haulers.
We can also talk about potentially a partnership with solid waste on the bulky waste pickup.
Correct. Or even starting, there are several kind of junk collectors still, and he does that as well. I don't know what his customer base is as far as regular customers versus junk collection. I'd have to ask him, but that would be an option too, is still remain as what we call like a junk hauler.
Suki, you've got one more slide.
Yes, yep, sorry, here it is. Timeline and next steps, if franchising is approved. November 6th, we would bring to you all, we would vote on a resolution for residential collection franchising. Roughly in February 2025, procure a consultant to assist in developing a request for proposals for franchises. May to June 2025, budget and strategic analysis assist staff in mapping potential zones to ensure proportional zones for the RFP. Mayor and commission vote on adoption of residential collection ordinances roughly in July 2025. Next summer, July, August 2025, the RFP would be released. December, January of 2026, mayor and commission vote to award franchisees for each zone. January, March 2026, contracting for selected haulers. And you can see January to May, educating our community, moving carts around, restickering carts to get ready for the launch of franchising roughly August to September. Industry estimates a rollout for franchising typically takes 2 to 3 years. Now, sorry, where I thought I was before.
Right. So I've got Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Wright, Commissioner Andy.
And one of my questions, what about, I'm concerned about Johnson's, and what we really be able to guarantee that he would have we could be a part of being a subcontractor. Hope that would be the case. We don't, we're already getting, as some of you all know, we're already getting emails and text messages from our constituents about franchising and that they didn't want to change. Now, I live in a neighborhood that has an HOA. But we have a bit our own, we can pick our own private homes. However, we have some people in our neighborhood that they own, go to the landfill. And then again, I've heard from 2 of them already. So again, I'm gonna wait and see what LRC is gonna come up with, what their recommendations gonna be coming out of the committee. And I know y'all.
This is.
Sorry, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, okay. But anyway, I guess those are my 2 concerns, eliminating, possibly eliminating Johnson's, whether or not he's gonna be subcontracted. I guess I'm saying this to say that we need to make sure that he's gonna be a part of this, rollout once with one of these, large haulers in the future, so he can serve. Now, what area he may be responsible for, we can't control it from that perspective. And the only other thing with me, I have a private hauler. They wouldn't know what they want to do, went to somebody else and got better pricing. So I kind of like to have the autonomy to pick my own hauler. I could. So that's some of the things that we're getting from our constituents.
And Commissioner Fisher, could you, I think I lost on the HOA. Could you explain what you said with the HOA?
HOA, we got a little bit of autonomy to pick our own private.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Now I understand.
However, I have about 3 or 4 people that live in my neighborhood haul.
Self-haul?
Yeah, they self-haul. And they are totally against this because they want to continue. And they hadn't paid. the case they done on their own, so. So yes, I thought I'm getting that already. People start to read this, and again, like I say, some of us have already got from commissioner, sent all of us emails today about this, so again, I'm up with that, I'm not sure what side I'm going, but, we'll just see what happens.
Allison?
Yeah, it is very complicated. LRC, that's one of the reasons we kicked it out for everybody, because the more we learned, the more we realized we were getting deeper and deeper in details without being convinced. Some of us are convinced who've had this mandatory service. And I'm not even sure if we can map where the mandatory service has less litter than the part of the county that doesn't have mandatory service. I don't know that we can get that. That's, again, one of the things we might not be able to plot, but it is a community issue, the littering and the public health safety of the hoarding of it. I think code enforcement hasn't been able to really address some of the people who stockpile. And then if we can train the public to take it to the curb, the service is coming. But I get it. The people that are doing the right thing and are very thrifty and they're doing it to a T, I would say is the minority of how some of the people are handling their trash that don't have it mandated. But that was more commentary than question. My question, Suki, is on the part about the solid waste department's current service district. Didn't you say also with moving forward, what we would want as FRC is the vote for .1 so that more details would come forward for us to continue to learn the details that we don't have without that consultation.
Correct.
Didn't you say that the zone for solid waste would also have a more effective mapping? If this goes forward, there'll be a point, a couple dots down, if we continue to move forward, where your service has like a full street instead of a parcel.
Correct. On all the edges, Whitehead Road's a good example in that area. Whitehead Road, we might go down the street, pick up 3 houses, turn around and come out. Then you might have every other hauler in there continuing down the street to pick up whatever. We've got a lot of edges like that you would want shored up when you do that. We may want shored up even if you don't do this. It doesn't make any of us real efficient for all of us going halfway into a road to service a handful of roll carts.
Commissioner, you bring up a good point as well. As we talked in the LRC, if we were directed to bring this to the full mayor commission, what would be in front of you to vote on would not be an ordinance, it'd be a resolution, merely to signal intent for us to move forward with doing the work. Obviously, as y'all know, resolution signal intent, ordinance law, resolution can just go away. So that's what we would be asking.
Mike, Patrick, and Carol.
Sure. Did the LRC consider any type of doing a survey amongst people that this would impact?
We did have a discussion of that survey, and it didn't, I mean, the last survey was done when was it, in 2019?
2019.
So there was a feeling that it was recent enough that it didn't need to be redone again. There were some of us who were sort of arguing and sometimes for it. And, to be honest here with this discussion, we are aware that one of the options that we've discussed is you all would give us direction and say, hey, send it back to the LRC and we want you to follow up and do this. But we thought it was really important to have this broader discussion with everyone involved because it's such a hot issue.
Can we sell that 2019 survey? Can that get sent to us?
And then back to the survey, I think that we thought a survey would be more beneficial with more of the details that would come along from the contractor's study too. Because at this point, there's still what ifs, like somebody wants to know what the zone's going to look like. Further along, I think the survey would work within here, Mike.
Getting more granular about, do you want?
Because this is,
Some limb and
yeah.
those kinds of.
When you talk about granular, this is everybody's curb front.
Well, that's
So-
also,
and
that's also an extra $30-something a month to people that may not be paying that extra $30 a month with the self-haulers. And,
Sure.
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but how is this gonna help, the illegal dumping of mattresses that you said apartments have? I mean, that's,
Folks that don't have trash service, I mean, and it may not with the mattress example is somebody's just taking their bulky waste, somebody, and that could be
studies about, are there studies that we can look at that shows?
where mattresses are coming from.
No, I don't care where mattresses got, because this is not gonna solve the mattresses problem, but the illegal dumping problem.
It's a theoretical point, to your point, Commissioner Hamby, is that, and Suki said that, you know, we don't know if this is actually going to stop legal dumping.
But we do, know
I got
that the.
one at a
I'm not
time.
done. I'm not done. All right. So,
But we can bring, Commissioner Hamby, we can bring all the data that we have. We have been working on this for quite some time from the litter, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful. So I can bring some data with me.
well, I think some data is necessary. If you say there's a legal dumping problem, then we need to figure out what that problem is before we do any sort of resolution to authorize another mandatory charge for people that don't currently have that mandatory charge. So because you're talking about impacting, well, you say there's 25,000 people outside, but not all those 25,000 people. Roughly what, about 7,000 people that self-haul.
Roughly.
So you're talking about 7,000 people, homes that you potentially impact. So I'm just trying to get a better understanding of.
And we can bring some
legal dumping problem
too from other communities where illegal dumping had been not allowing self-hauling had a positive impact on illegal dumping. So there are other communities that have gone before to do this, and that was a positive side effect.
Be positive, but to what extent would it be positive?
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, I guess a little bit of extent would be positive, but that's still not, I mean, I don't see it stopping illegal dumping.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Suki. Thank you, staff. Okay. You know, I'm a supporter of this and where do I start? Okay, so there are some of the trash haulers that don't want to go public in saying it, but they actually support this idea. One of the reasons why they support it, well, if you look at other cities who implemented countywide or citywide trash pickup, there's a huge reduction in illegal dumping. I'm saying there's a significant difference when it comes to illegal dumping on the streets. And if you look at some of the other cities who have implemented this, and currently we had a work session about this time last year, where we've noticed I can estimate about 85% of the illegal dumping we have now is from us, and then the rest is from people in our surrounding county. So we got 15% of the people who do illegal dumping in this county, not from this county. So most of it's done by us.
The ones that we caught,
Yeah.
referring to the ones that we caught on the cameras, correct?
Caught on camera. But if you look at, I don't know what slide it's in, but if you look at the $900,000 figure, that is a very conservative estimate when it comes to the cost of illegal dumping and pickup. Because you gotta consider staff time, the court time, the cameras, the additional hire that we hired to look at the cameras and all the personnel that goes, you know, and the time spent going to court. So it's well over $1 million spent annually just for illegal dumping. But part of the reason why some of the trash haulers, self-haulers, or trash haulers like this idea, because it's efficient. If you look at, go down Highland Park Drive, most of the duplex rentals, quadruplexes, they all have trash pickup. They all have 4 different trash haulers. And so if you go drive down that road, every day there's a trash bin out there. And so I'm gonna haulers say, you know, like it's stupid, I won't say stupid, but it's inefficient for us from a monetary standpoint, for me to go down Highland Park Drive, pick up 3 houses, then go all the way to Timothy Road and do 20 houses and do that on a Tuesday. And you know, it's similar for most of these trash. On a daily basis, these trash haulers are zigzagging across town. So they save money when they're in a zone. If we do a consultant. We can look at it like, how we do our tow trucks. And maybe not be able to eliminate, Jimmy John, because we do it like I do our tow trucks. Our tow trucks who have the most capacity to pick up, have to tow cars, they get the bulky of the bulky of the calls, getting bulky waste and all that stuff. But anyway, the most of the call. So Jim John is not necessarily gonna be eliminated. He does still have capacity. Just depends on if we go the route of a consultant and that the firm or team decides how it's broken up. But my main thing is that it's costly for us to pick up this trash, the legal dumping. And the biggest thing that I hear from my constituents is like decades ago, we were promised trash pickup. And like a lot of people, I get the fact that, you know, the self-haulers, and I agree with them, you know, they, like me, I do recycling all the time. I may have one bag a month for trash, but just the pure benefit of having cleaner streets, save $1 million from our budget, so we can put towards something else, maybe to affordable housing, and make sure I go down my list. Yeah, definitely y'all drive down Highland Park Drive. Just take a look. Take in consideration some of the houses, I'm not gonna say it publicly, like it because they save on gas, they save on mileage, they save on their trucks.
And they have a consistent customer base.
And
That's most of them, like, they would have a consistent customer base that they know.
Yeah,
Not known every month.
And then we can incorporate a more standard pickup, as well as we can incorporate for low income and elderly, where they won't have to pay, or they can pay a reduced amount. But for me, just if you look at the other cities and counties that have implemented this, it's a huge difference. To illegal dumping and the service that's provided. That's it.
Carol, did you get everything earlier, or what did you have?
No, I have a couple of separate things. You brought up, Mike, the 7,000 people who don't have, aren't paying someone to haul their trash. We don't have any idea where those are. I mean,
the reason we were aiming in the ballpark was COVID. When we had appointments, we were able to kind of get somewhat of a handle on
Right.
self-haulers.
because I would actually bet that, I mean, that if you went down Highland Park, there'd be places that don't have trash bins out, because this applies to duplexes and quadruplexes as well, right?
It does, but some duplexes it's required, a lot of our duplexes, it is required to have trash service, even in the general service district. So I could probably find that out.
Because I know that one of the apartment complexes there that does have a dumpsters was having real repeated problems with people in the area in Cedar Shoals bringing over the trash. And so then this apartment complex had this trash that was just overflowing because so many people were coming from outside. The recycling, I just don't understand this thing. I mean, we were paying by, is this going to encourage recycling or not, or do we not care about that? Is this?
Do you mean going?
I mean, going to because you had that pay
as you throw.
Are we gonna change that for the urban service district? I mean, you're saying that.
I think that would be up to you all. Whatever we do, we would want it consistent between the urban service district and general service district. In the SWAC committee, we talked about a lot of the private haulers do not like pay as you throw because they have to have all of those different service containers, or at least some of them, on the yard at all time for a new customer asking for a 20-gallon or a 64-gallon, et cetera. So that was a long conversation within SWAC. And we felt like one way that we could come to a consensus in SWAC was saying we could give up pay as you throw. That would be easier for the private haulers. And I mean, honestly, for all haulers, it's easier. Does it encourage recycling? It doesn't as much if you have a 96-gallon for trash and a 96-gallon for recycling. The pay as you throw is there to encourage recycling, but all haulers, including us, it's expensive having pay as you throw because you have to have a supply of extra roll carts at any given time for people to change levels when they want to change levels.
Right, but we are trying to encourage the recycling. I am concerned about that. And that's not something we really checked on, did we, when we did a comparative study?
Correct.
Not the.
Oh, no, yes, we did. All of the ones that, none of the communities that we checked, none of them have pay as you throw. They all use either a 64 or most of them were using a 96 gallon roll cart. I think all of them were using a 96 gallon roll cart.
Another question on the RFP, the question there. How could we, I mean, we have 4 sections that aren't the city trash. But let's just make me, Carol's Trash Service. I got a big business going on here. Couldn't I go for all of these with the best bet and get all 4 and then the rest of them don't have any options? I mean, didn't we already, couldn't it be more, couldn't I get more than one of these areas if I bid on it correctly?
I think that would be a question for the attorney's office.
So I think you
theoretically,
could,
yes.
I would say, yeah, I think you could. And
So, I mean, that whole question about like, oh, we're gonna give them to all the existing ones. I mean, I've heard conflicting information on this. When we say we're gonna have.
I wasn't at the committee meetings, but I seem to recall Sherry tell me they said, caution, we're not sure you'll be able to do that.
Right.
We want to be able to give each one, but if you're doing this through an RFP process, I don't think you'll be able to
Well,
guarantee.
I just wanted to clarify that because I think there's a little confusion on that. And then.
And also, I want to point out one thing since we're here on this issue.
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard about this subcontract issue. I'd want to do some research on that before I give any assurance related to that issue. Which is one of the reasons, originally there was a desire to do perhaps an ordinance to go ahead and get this kind of semi-locked in place. I advise staff, let's back it up, try a resolution so we can have time to look at some of this stuff. You can debate whether a resolution is locking you in. I mean, that's up to you politically. It's certainly not law, it's just intent. But I can hear your concern there. Once you go down that road, you can't back up. But some of the reason I suggested switching from a resolution to ordinance, when we talked about this in staff meeting, after I heard some of the things I'm hearing more, was this is going to be very technical. We're going to be very careful. These providers who aren't selected, if we don't dot every I and cross every T in the process, we could have litigation. We got to make sure we're doing this correctly. So I can tell you, I'm not sure. Maybe there is a way, but I haven't researched it. We haven't. Sherry told me she expressed concern about being able to guarantee that you're going to divide them up in the 4.
Right, and that's why we have, and then the last question was the 100,000 on the consultant. If you brought that up in the meeting, I've spaced it out, or, whatever. But that's a lot of money. I mean, that's like a full-time job for a year with benefits. So is this,
That's just the average from start to finish, if you're franchising, it would be more than a year's worth of work as well. So, because if you're going to from start to finish there's a lot of work involved in franchising. So it would take, I think I told you, 2 to 3 years to do that.
Oh, I thought that was the whole process. I thought it was like we were going to get the consultant to do this. I mean, wouldn't we have to, okay, let's just be technical here, back to the deadlines here. Seems like we would want to go with 2 different contracts with the consultant, because it's not even guaranteed that if you go back to the deadline, we have to vote on the ordinance, right? So I thought the consultant was just to get these details together that we put into the ordinance and not, if you look back at that deadline there, right? So, we don't want to go to contract for someone for 2 years when we don't even know, we got to vote on this in July. So, we're putting out RFP in February if we went along with this plan, and then we're voting on it in July. And that's for the consultant. So.
Is your observation, Carol, there'd be 2 different segments of work for a consultant?
Right. I don't think that, and I think that needs to be clear, because what's out there in the public and what I got even from looking at this presentation is we're good in this consultant to assist in developing the request for approval and to provide expertise for ordinance and content development. That looks all like it's getting you ready for July and of next year, not afterwards. And so $100,000 seems very high for that service. And I've seen reaction from the public have as well for that.
Yeah, that would be, the 100,000 was an estimate for all of that to guide us through that process, writing the RFP, helping us with the contracts after that, to get them up to.
But since it's not guaranteed, I think we need to break that down because it's not guaranteed. We don't have that ordinance passed. Even if we get there, we don't want to be, we want two parts to that. Two parts.
$100,000 would be for both the pre and post ordinance work.
Correct. And it's just an estimate. Yes.
Okay.
Y'all haven't yet to see a scope of work for the consultant. No one has seen the scope of the work.
Right,
We haven't
right.
crafted the scope of work for the consultant.
Right. But I mean, if you're telling me the 100,000 is for 2 years, 3 years and other work, that makes the price seem a lot more than the price for work.
Right. It wasn't just to do just the preliminary. This would be roughly, if you all knew that you wanted to go through with this, we would hire a consultant to get us across the finish line with the RFP and the contracts and the franchising.
We want to clarify that because there's already a long discussion in my neighborhood Facebook group on that.
Yes.
Carol, that everything?
That's everything.
John?
One of the things Sherry said is, if we send out RFP, it's not going to be restricted to just these existing haulers. Anybody can bid on it.
That's right.
There's no guarantee that the existing haulers that we have will get it.
Correct.
Right, true. Harold's hauler might get it. He will.
I mean, that's what Sherry did emphasize when
true, very good.
do that.
John, is that everything?
Yes.
Ovita, I saw your hand earlier. I wasn't sure if your question got answered.
I'm good.
Okay, then I've got Jesse, Patrick, Mike.
Yeah, so a few things, I guess just first on some of the discussion that's happened. I got a copy of the survey results they gave us if you want. I can pass it across the room if you want to see it, but
You can email it to us.
I'm sure they can email, but it's, almost all of it, like all but 2 pages is comments on private haulers. And they're super negative, most of them. Now, obviously, there's a disposition for people to fill out surveys to be negative, but I think a lot of the concerns we've heard, they're shared by many people, but it varies, depending on who your hauler is, what your experience is, whether you have an HOA to help back you up or your facilities. So I think moving forward, another survey after we decide a direction to go that just says that asks people what services they want would be more useful than like repeating kind of what we've already gotten information around. And then I'm glad that Patrick brought up the unification thing. I mean, the thing that I've heard a lot, the entirety of District 6 is in this area that would be directly affected. And the multiple trucks on the streets has been a big complaint from a lot of folks. There's obviously some folks who are like, hey, what are you doing? I like it the way it is. Or they have concerns about the private enterprise thing. And when I've talked to them about everything I've learned in these committee meetings, for the most part, they've actually been pretty convinced that it makes sense. Like we're giving anyone in the private sector the opportunity to bid, just like we do for anything else we would do in this community. So it's not like we're like taking away the free market. We're just, regulating it in a more sensible way. We're the only county in the state or the region really that does it.
Just in that comparative analysis, yes.
Yeah, or in that comparative analysis that does it this way, right? So like no one else has self-hauling. No one else is doing a lot of the weird things we do. And most of them have zones that are much larger than ours, which is also part of why in our current model, we have haulers that do poor service here when they experience a staff shortage or a storm or whatever, because there's other communities that can hold them accountable through their contracts that they're going to prioritize first. And so, our residents end up getting a raw end of the deal as a result of our like weird uniqueness, our smaller market. I don't know if I explained that super well. So that was one thing I wanted to ask you to weigh in on, was just like, if you could explain why solid waste hasn't been able to hold private haulers accountable in the current model and the way that you anticipate it would be able to in the future.
We have a permit system, and with the permit system, other than actually charging them a once per year cost, when we spoke to the attorney, Sherry Hines, she said there was really nothing we could put in there, hold over their head in an ordinance besides true franchising to help our cause when they fought. Because we don't have them. Customer service is where we often hear about our private haulers. Customers don't call us typically to tell me until it gets really bad. when it gets really bad, you see comments on that sheet that we had in 2019. We start getting the calls for customers that are in the general service district that aren't happy with the person they've selected. I don't, unless we somehow shift all, which this would be a really patchwork way to do things. There's no way for me to know who is providing good customer service, who is not providing good customer service, because they call their haulers. There's no reason for them to call me unless they have solid waste department for their hauler. And so we would have to put a lot of mechanisms in place that I don't think you could do at all without franchising, having some sort of contract with these private haulers that are more extensive than the current service. Right now, what we have, even though unfortunately in the ordinance, which we need to change regardless of this, it calls our current haulers franchisees. They are not franchisees. They are permit holders. They hold a permit to collect waste in Athens-Clarke County. And that's all that we really can do is make sure that they have the proper trucks. We check their insurance to make sure they have proper insurance. When I say proper trucks that actually are roadworthy, have proper lighting, proper stickering on the trucks. We don't have a mechanic look at their trucks or anything. We just make sure that they have what we require when they go over the scales at the recycling facility or the landfill, and proper insurance to be operating in Athens-Clarke County. Other than that, we have nothing in our ordinance that actually I can cite them for poor customer service, because I don't know when they have poor customer service unless their customers would haphazardly call the solid waste
And
department.
what we've heard from Sherry in those meetings, if I'm understanding correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Judd, is that in the permitting model, there's really no way for us to like level up our accountability. The only way to do that would be to move to a franchising model. Is
The
that
accountability can be tough. I mean, ultimately, if I'm dissatisfied, I switch to another hauler.
services?
for the county government to hold these haulers?
They wouldn't replace it, so if I think it's changed and my neighbors care.
We did that during the pandemic. We were getting all the calls.
I'm saying for the county government to hold private haulers accountable to something though.
Yeah,
That would require.
They're just providing a service, and you can, your remedy is to switch services.
Jesse,
So we're in, again, it's sort of this notion of a tighter or looser regulatory.
Yeah, all I'm getting at here, because we've gotten some correspondence, and
Right.
we're all familiar with it, that talks about like, well, why can't we just hold them more accountable with the current model? And that's what I'm trying to clarify. So
Jesse, do you remember on that same line in LRC, we learned there was a county that did have a franchise, and to maintain their franchise criteria, we got worse service. Remember that exact was another example.
That's what spurred that 2019 survey, to be honest with you, because that particular hauler, they would get fined daily if they missed a pickup. And so what they were experiencing staff shortages like all of us were, and they chose to protect the franchising in an adjacent county versus deal with us because they didn't have there's no teeth in any of our ordinances. They knew they could, so to speak, fall off the customer service wagon here, and then maybe down the road, pick up customers again if they needed to down the road in Athens.
Did I hear you say correctly, though, that you did fine them?
No, that was the other place.
We did not find them. We found at that time we could not do anything because we don't have a mechanism in place, because there's no legal way to do it for folks to, like they were asking me, the attorney's office, how many complaints we get about them. Does everybody call and complain to us? No. There's no way to drive all the complaints. So I even know when they're having problems.
How are you gonna deal with it with a franchise though? They're not
With the franchise,
gonna be able to change service.
but with the franchise for customer service, you add that in, they're actually very specific models. When you have a franchise, you list in what you want to hold them accountable to. Weekly pickup, if they don't get that pickup and it's their fault.
Judge of all that.
Usually it's usually the solid waste department or
How many phone calls is it gonna take for you to do something about a franchise that's not doing their job?
well, hopefully it's just one to that franchise that's there. If they'd come into us and then we would let them know that they have missed a customer. And just like the one in Gwinnett County, for example, the reason that hauler was getting called to task because the county was calling them because they'd missed pickup. So typically it works. You have a call center, just like a lot of counties do for other kinds of services.
I get all that, Suki. But what I'm getting at is if somebody's getting poor service and consistently getting poor service, you're gonna fine them, but they still don't have the right to go change that service.
They don't. But then if the county, what you would write into a proposal, a good solid contract, you would have consequences in there to get rid of that hauler if there were so many reports X reports of poor service that were documented, that you should actually get rid of that particular
Who's
hauler.
going to determine how that's done and
That would be part of the contractual, that you write that in the
let me
RFP.
finish, and the due process for how it's going to get done. So how is that?
To your point, Commissioner Hamby, the onus would be on us.
Correct.
There would be more responsibility on solid waste, our legal team, and it would be on us.
Well, if we're going through all this, why don't we just take over the whole solid waste system for the county then?
And just from experience in making, it had franchise one provider, there's no easy solution
No.
having that, because they had staffing problems too, and they weren't picking the trash up. Even we had a good contract, but if they don't have people, you got problems. I mean, you follow what I'm saying? People were irate.
Right.
So you're right. That is, I mean, I'm gonna make that clear, because I can't draft a contract good enough if there's a shortage of people and they can't pick up the trash. Your ultimate solution is what Macon did, you switch providers. That's what they, so I want to make that clear. You're making,
Well, I
so
just,
I don't want anybody to think I can draft a contract to take care of all that.
why aren't we looking at picking up garbage for all the county like we did for Riverbend and others that wanted it? I mean, if you want equitable things, then let's just expand our solid waste program.
That's not for me. That would be,
I mean, if you're looking
All
to solve
opportunity.
solve the problem. Don't just, that's all I gotta say.
So thank you for answering that. I just wanted to conclusion of slides 5 and 14. We can go to those. So 5 is like the the why. Okay. Yeah. So this to me is like one of the biggest reasons to be doing this. And actually, to Commissioner Hamby's point, I mean, if this may well serve as a bridge for us expanding the municipal service program. I mean, I actually think that would be a good way to go, but the upfront costs to that are probably prohibitive at this time, is my understanding. And then another big part of it is like everyone on the SWAC wanting to try to find a way forward that gives current service providers an opportunity to continue to provide service here. So maybe this serves as, if we find that those service providers aren't doing their job, then we can kind of at that juncture decide whether we want to take over a zone municipally or give the, contract to somebody else. But on this slide, the standard level of service that it emphasizes, one of the other things that was really notable to me from what we've learned in committee is that it's and the consistent messaging. So like we have all these issues where private haulers aren't necessarily telling people in ACC accurate or up-to-date information around like what is or is not recyclable, or various other things that we might want to get out about like the charm facility and stuff like that. So this is a way to actually make sure that we get that consistent messaging to everyone countywide whose stuff ends up in our facilities and our landfill. And then the life of the landfill part, that there's this big problem. I mean, there's this whole kind of like management nightmare that the landfill deals with self-haulers. And I've kind of had impressed upon me that like being the only county of the ones that they studied that even does self-hauling, like part of the benefit of getting rid of self-hauling is how much more efficiently we can run the landfill and keep people from bringing in garbage that aren't ACC residents. Like right now, there's no effective way to determine whether someone who's coming up is actually an ACC resident, and there's no effective way to ensure that whatever garbage they're bringing in is only their own. So this would change that problem too, I guess. And then on slide 14, we could go to that one. It's another Y slide later on. All right. The title of it is
what's the title?
Comparative Analysis Highlights. It starts with surveyed. There we go. Yeah. So in addition to the kind of idea that we're like unique in maybe some unfortunate ways and that there's no self-hauling elsewhere, the other big thing that I think is notable here, and this might not be true for people who are self-hauling, although they have to pay for their own gas and whatever else. But you're talking about for the average person, maybe not everybody, but for the average person, expecting them to pay less to get more. So that like rates up to 45% cheaper with enhanced or additional services provided. We have examples of other communities where people are getting leaf and limb and recycling and garbage. often with more frequency than people see here, and bulky waste in a lot of cases, and food scrap pickup, and they're paying the same or less than people here might pay. So that's a really big selling point, I think, when we're talking about like representing the whole community and the interests of everyone. Yes, some people, my household's a household that currently has the tiniest roll cart. We put out like 1 bag of garbage a week, you know? So it's not necessarily saving us as much as it would somebody who's already putting out a lot of garbage. But on net, on the whole, for the average Athenian, they'd be getting more for less, which I think is a really big selling point.
Right, I've got Patrick, Mike, Ovita, Carol. And
Can I go
then,
first? I gotta leave, I got a doctor's
all right,
appointment.
Ovita's gonna go because she's got a depart, and then we'll get the others.
It does not seem, and I guess this was a good idea to bring it to a work session instead of a commission meeting. Kelly, I'm just asking from an objective point of view with the conversations that we weren't expecting or probably needed. Does this look like it's going to be on the agenda for the recommendation for next month? Or is there a feeling that this might need to go back to LRC?
So at least thus far, try to collect a disparate set of thoughts and observations here in this room. What I would say is that optimally, we'd have a resolution that would provide some near-term work for a consultant, you know, with the prospect, if that was successful, of a second phase.
Okay, so I won't be at the agenda setting meeting with you guys. That's what I'm asking. Is this, so you do expect this to be on the agenda for
The October, November cycle.
Okay.
And just a heads up for everybody, our November meeting is November 6th, which is Wednesday, since election day is Tuesday. All right, thank you. All right, I've got Patrick, Mike, Carol.
Quick, have any communities done a pilot program where they tried it for 6 months, 3 months?
I have no idea. I don't know that that would be legally possible to do something like that, because there'd be a lot of contractual obligations you have to fulfill. And I just don't know that you would want to do that, because there is a great upfront cost to switch roll carts around. That's one item that the private haulers have vocalized the most, is when you break the community up, that's a lot of switching around of their supplies and roll carts and et cetera. So I don't know that anybody would want to do that because the upfront cost. And I just don't think contractual, I don't know that it would even be legal to do something like that for a short period of time.
Carol?
I want to go back to the why, the landfill reduction. 2 points to that. One, is that mostly from reducing the self-hauling and the way we could reduce self-hauling from out of the county? And if that's the case, why can't we just have people show a license? There's a lot of things that happen.
Yeah, we have tried. A lot of people will come in with people from Athens-Clarke County, licenses. We found the only time that we actually had a reduction was during COVID, when we actually were charging water bills and we knew exactly where the tonnage was coming from. We had a substantial reduction in tonnages. And some of that was because of outside folks, Madison County, Oconee County.
But they're coming in with fake licenses?
They'll come in with people like that they know from Athens. They're like, hey, Patrick, I know you live in Athens. I need to bring some stuff out to that landfill. I know they're going to turn me away. Can you drive and show them their ID? We've had that.
So is that,
have that quite a bit. So
is that where back to the first question then, is that where the landfill life extension is coming from?
No, where it's mainly coming from is the commercial sector. Because if we know, let's say too, in one thing that you didn't put up there, and I want people to hear this, I love my staff, and people know I love my staff. I will go to bat for them. But a community this size, you could get rid of the solid waste department and have all of this service by one or two, fewer haulers. I'm just saying that there are options out there as well. What you would see, if we know exactly what residential haulers are operating and we know how many homes they have, we know that if waste management doesn't have any piece of the pie and they're coming with an automated truck to our landfill, we would be turning them away because they don't have a residential base here. Right now, almost all of the haulers will say the material in those in some of the trucks that we can't determine, especially rear loaders or automated. They'll tell us that they're coming in from some of the general service areas. We know that they're running Madison County and Clarke County at the same time. And so some of that would end if you had fewer haulers and we knew roughly how many folks they were picking up in the general service. That's where we'd see the biggest
So
reduction.
these are haulers beyond the 4?
No, these are our 4 haulers now.
Yeah.
We know they cross over.
But how would we, I mean, again, curbside, let's for example, they're in Oconee County. How would we know, like, we don't know that they're bringing Oconee County trash?
We know that they are now. If we knew their customer base, you could extrapolate some of that with their customer base, how many customers they had. And if they only had customers in Athens-Clarke County, they're picking up on Tuesdays. Why would they be coming on Thursday, Friday, Mondays to the landfill
So
for residential trash?
It's restricting those because they'd be coming in, well, I mean, they have a section, so they might be coming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but they'd offer a section. But it's a better way to control,
Like, well,
it's a better way to control
correct.
what those haulers are bringing in.
Correct. And theoretically, you're going to empty your trash like daily, Commissioner, like ours. When we pick up in like Alice, if I'm in Commissioner Wright's district, that trash is not going to stay on that truck. We're emptying it every single day. We know it's from her area. And so our trucks are emptied every single day in the area that we're picking up. And so would private haulers. They're not going to keep, it's a vector issue.
Yeah.
So if they were in the general service, like off of Whit Davis, and that's their section of Whit Davis, we know that they would be emptying those trucks on more than likely on Monday or Tuesday morning to get rid of the trash that they had if they had to hold it over. And they shouldn't be coming every single day to the landfill with more trash because they're not servicing any residential haulers. Now, they could be, servicing some of their commercial haulers or their the commercial customers. But we have a large, we do have a lot more tonnage coming in the residential sector from some of the surrounding counties than I think that any of us probably.
So these
really know about.
sections are not things that would require more than 5 days of pickup. They'd be like 2 days of pickup.
The idea would be like, you would want a community of this size to be picked up in a pie piece. Like, this is your day, like your day is Monday, so that you wouldn't have you don't want backtracking through, so that pie piece would all be picked up,
Be able to get a pie piece in a day.
We've got one more big pie
Correct.
piece to get to on our agenda today.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and close discussion. Just quickly observe. Appreciate the robust conversation. As I mentioned, kind of Vita's query a couple of minutes ago. I think the best initial approach is to have a resolution that may want to include some of the component pieces that we've talked about today. So greatest possible assurance, even if it's not an absolute assurance, of the ability of very small scale haulers to be integrated somehow. I'll say very broadly, what we're dealing with is trying to think of how do we best enter the modern era with the vestige of the past. So much of the work we do is change management, and I think it is important that we get to a better streamlined system when we live in. So thank you, Suki. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you all.
And last topic of the day is going to be sewer capacity. We have Hollis from Public Utilities, our director of that department with us. And so we have understandably been concerned about how do we not only manage our core treatment facilities and make sure we've got enough capacity there, but that the pipes getting to those treatment facilities are large enough to handle the current and coming development, of which there's quite a bit. You will notice these skyscrapers and cranes rising all around us. Hollis, it's good to see you. Sir. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, there's been a lot about sewer capacity. So we're going to try to tackle it today. We're going to tell you a few things about the history. We're going to jump into where the issues we have, capacity issues, and some of the fixes we've come up with. So let's go into the history. Sanitary sewer started in 1891, believe it or not. And it was collected and went straight out into the river till we constructed plants in 1962. Some of the piping, so that's 70 years going straight out to the river. Some of the piping is clay, concrete, PVC, truss, PVC. So it's a mixture of actual equipment or actual piping. History of service delivery plan, unification charter required plan to provide water and wastewater. So to the residents. So what we say, when we say that, we're saying the plant provides water, produces water, and the wastewater plants are sized to capacity to treat it. In between there, we got to make up the projects to get it to and from. System-wide modeling is performed at each service delivery plan update. So we work with planning on 2020 and 2025 based on population to make sure that we are prepared for what's coming up. We also work with Piedmont, St. Mary's, UVA, all the big industries, and make sure any projects they have that's coming up is included in 2025 and any update from there. Service delivery plan is updated every 5 years, started in 1995. And we do it every 5 years to make sure we're on track with population growth. The last service delivery plan, 2020, was estimated 400 million over 20 years. We invested a lot of that, put it back into the ground. A little bit more history. In 2010, 2012, we upgraded 3 wastewater plants, and along with the UNO 2B and 2C, which is around Newton Bridge and behind the plant. We increased the sewer capacity back there. Still maintain one of the robust maintenance programs to assist us in producing condition assessments. These condition assessments let us know where the areas of concern are, what we need to do to fix them, and we eliminate the I&I as we gain capacity in those areas.
And remind everybody what I&I is.
I&I is inflow and infiltration, and it comes into the pipes where there's leaks or shifting in pipes and age as the pipes age. That's a map of the sewer area. Got the Middle Oconee Basin, North Oconee Basin, and Cedar Creek Basin. And we're going to zoom in for that in just a minute. Some of the challenges, sewer line replacement, manhole rehabilitation. It takes 5 years for us to start a project to completion. 18 months to 2 years to design, bring it before you for preliminary construction concept approval. 2.5 to 3 years for construction. If you think about Brooklyn, phase 2, UNO 2B and 2C, it takes a while to get it properly. And mostly because we're a gravity system. And then we talked just briefly before about inflow and infiltration.
One quick question. On the next slide, we get to that. Just a curious question.
We've been here so long, we've all frozen in place.
Yes, sir.
Are those stock photos or those actually infrastructure in Athens?
Those construction. That's UNO 2B behind Beecham. That's the tunnel.
Are you serious?
Yes, sir.
The top photo on the right-hand side of the screen, that was the drill shaft. And then the photo at the bottom left, that is the actual tunnel that runs from Beecham Water Treatment Facility, goes underneath our meter management facility, Loop 10. Cross Martin Mechanical comes out down there behind Dairy Pack, and that eliminated a very long aerial
Wow.
And there's also a couple of creek crossings that tunnel actually goes under now instead of the aerials that we had prior.
That's impressive. So
You
when
think,
we say like infrastructure, we really mean like, we need to invest in our infrastructure.
Yes, sir. Big project, we actually got money back, believe it or not, on that contract.
We need a field trip.
Not into the pipes.
So, some previous projects since I've come aboard is Tanya Branch, Forest Creek, Barnett Shoals, 2B, which we're seeing now, 2C, and then Brooklyn Phase 1. Finally, it's completing up. So what will we have coming up? On the course, construction and design, Brooklyn Phase 2, which goes all the way to Piedmont, Miller County East, Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. And the reason why the phases are broke up because of the dollar amount, 20 million per phase. So you can imagine how much could go quickly if you do the whole phase. Not only that, it takes easements, and each phase takes years. So you try to keep them easements within the years, so you don't have to pay them twice or 3 times. And then Sanford Phase 1 is in the cemetery, it's under construction now. And then Phase 2 is with Sanford, with UGA right now, they're working on Phase 2. So that's what's coming up. All right, where are the capacity issues? So the green is a good part. We don't have constraints. Tanya is one of them. Some of them in Nux areas, one of them. But you can see the most part is we do have capacity. We talk about some of the constraints, which we just tackled last week with one of your votes. There's an aerial for College Ave coming across from the 12-inch, going over to the 36-inch. Eliminate some of the downtown capacity constraints. You can imagine a 12-inch diameter pipe going to a 36. You got more capacity.
Can I just?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I understand correctly that this is based on what's currently already built and operating. So like where we see green is what's currently there, not what's already been approved to be built there, right?
It's all-
For example, like
it's
the mall is in the green, but then if the mall gets built, that might not be as green anymore, right? But, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, it is currently capacity for the mall and everything. You're correct.
But this doesn't, I guess what I'm
I'm
trying to get at, because part of how we landed here is like, we weren't necessarily looking this comprehensively, we were looking at like project by project on things. And so if everything that we've already approved gets built, this map might look very different than it currently does.
No, sir.
In terms of capacity.
No, sir. We run the model when we approve the projects that's slated, that's already approved to be built now.
Okay.
And also we have a sanitary sewer project that y'all approved for us to go to award, the Lake Miller project, which is behind the mall that goes to Middle County West. So we've got the plans and the processes that are already moving forward to handle that project and expand capacity. So if this map changes, it'll go from red to green.
Okay, so even with that stuff built, I know I just picked one example, but that's not familiar with. We've still got capacity after that too, based on this.
Yes, sir. The improvements we're making now, we're hoping these improvements will last hundreds of years from now.
So these colors here now contemplate both existing built structures and permitted structures that we know are coming.
Yes,
That's
sir.
correct.
Well, hang on now. Tell me how many, because I've heard in downtown, some folks have been denied a permit because we don't have capacity for them. How many permits have been denied across the county because we don't have capacity?
We've approved over the last 2 years about 82%.
I'm not asking about approval. I'm asking about those that have been denied.
18%.
18.
No, I can do the math. Tell me the number that represents.
I will have to get it for you, Commissioner. I'll have to get it to you.
Because if there's a problem downtown, I hope y'all see where I'm going. If we have a problem and you're telling me on this slide, it's going to take 3 years to fix the problem in an area where we are supposed to have the most dense, we can't wait 3 years for that to get fixed.
I think when we talk about the aerials, it'll be a shorter time frame because it's just going from one pipe to another. We're not talking about going through neighborhoods and getting easements and all that. It's on our property, and the distance from one side of the creek to the other side of the creek is not a long distance.
So how long is it going to take to fix the downtown issue?
I would say 1.5 to 2 years at the most. It's a shorter time frame because it's not that far. The longest time frame is permitting. You got to get a CLOMAR, you got to go through EPD. And the second crossing probably be under the river, so you have to deal with that as well.
How long have we known how long have we known that there's been a capacity issue for downtown?
I'd say that's a tough question. We've been working on trying to figure out how we can move flows, but it's 6 months at the most. It's something new because a lot of the developments that's around the Classic Center was not presented to PUD as a whole. It's just the Classic Center. So what we're trying to do is catch up and say, okay, we can do this. And I think we can, based on design and based on construction schedules. I think we'll be on the same page. What we've been trying to do is the same thing we did with a lot of developments is can we raise this manhole here and still meet capacity? And that's what we've done with a few things, but you can't raise a manhole in the road. So it's just a matter of can we do fixes internally to make it happen? And I think we can. I think that's part of my solution coming up is going to show you some of the solutions we can do. And maybe that do it.
Raising the manhole, trying to understand that.
Raising the manhole provides additional capacity where it doesn't spill.
But it's still spilling underneath though, isn't it?
No, sir. It's captured in the manhole. Manholes are typically designed for you to get down in, but they can be storage as well.
We have a pretty good.
And I'm going to show you up in just a minute.
But real quick.
Question on the map too.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Allison, you had a question on that.
I like the visuals, so it makes me have a question. So the hatch marking that's down in the bottom right, is that something relevant to this slide or was that just your base art?
No, it's just base art.
Okay, same with the purple lines. That's not part of what I need.
Purple lines are more of what's just been completed.
Okay.
She's pointing out
The outlines and the hatching, those are just differentiating our major basins. So there's the North Oconee Basin, the Middle Oconee Basin, and the Cedar.
Okay, so those demarcations go with the previous slide.
Yes.
Okay, and then, okay, all right, thanks.
And Nick, you have an observation.
Yes, sir. Point of clarification. Hollis noted that it'd be a year and a half, 2 years for one of the fixes, the one that y'all approved on College Avenue to cross over, as he was talking about, from the 12 to the 16 to the 36 on the other side. That'll be a year and a half, 2 years. But that's only part of the fix. That's phase one of the fix. Phase two of the fix is getting it over North Avenue, crossing the same way, 12, 16 to 36 on the other side. So that project by itself as well would be a year and a half, 2 years. So once those two projects, phase one and phase two are done, that is going to relieve, tell me if I'm wrong here, that's going to provide all the capacity that we need on that side of downtown. So there's really two sides of downtown. So the Classic Center side of downtown needs those two fixes in order for us to develop the entertainment district as we have so envisioned. In addition to that, there are a couple of projects that we have denied capacity permits. Multifamily, and they would be available to go as well. So there's two fixes.
So the two fixes, can you open up capacity with just one of the fixes, or do you have to wait till both fixes are fixed?
We open up capacity. I'm going to defer to you, Hollis. We're going to open up capacity with the first fix. Basically, first come, first serve in there. And then with the second fix, it would open up the rest of it. So as it stands today, there are a couple of developers ready to go right now.
I guess I would be thinking if I'm one of those developers and my property was owned a certain way, and then all of a sudden it comes back to me that I can't build on that property because of sewer capacity, I might be calling somebody to help me get my money back that I've been paying all this time on that zoned property.
What at least we've got counter to an adjacent community is that we haven't issued capacity letters and then retracted them. So sometimes development communities.
I don't worry about other counties, Kelly. I'm worried about ours.
Can I ask, can I clarify, you said a year to year and a half for phase one and then a year and a half to phase.
And they'll be
two.
staggered.
So that,
They'll be staggered.
That'll be staggered.
okay.
So overlapping.
So they do overlap a bit. Okay.
It will come before you on November vote.
And then, I know Mike's kind of getting at some of the history here. You said about 6 months ago is when you really became aware of the downtown issues. I guess I'm curious, like, what changed 6 months ago to learn that? And then if and how that change is reflected elsewhere in the county so that we're not repeating because it's not just downtown that we had this kind of uh-oh moment. Oh crap moment, we might say.
Yes.
We also had that about the Mitchell Bridge project. Yes, sir. Right, so what's changed about how we're looking at all this to know that what we're seeing now? If you talked to us a year ago, we might have been aware there was some kind of sewer concerns, but nothing like what we're talking about now. So how do we know that now what y'all are doing, what's changed to know that now this is correct and will stay correct, I guess is,
One thing that caught us off guard was the developments, the amount of developments coming in, the multi-family developments that came in. Some of these areas were not zoned for that at one, and we changed that. So when we do that, it affects capacity.
So that caught y'all off guard, but it's in, it goes across the mayor and commission's desk if there's a rezone, and we have this like comp plan. So I guess maybe this is more a question for the manager's office. Like what's changing about the information flow so that this doesn't happen again, right?
Right, Hollis.
So, and the planning process.
There's a plans review process, and you're right, and that's where you're going. There's a plans review process.
Well, even before it comes to us in rezone, there's people that check off on things and
So I can speak to that a little bit. Essentially, like with the downtown thing, a lot of that was due to the Classic Center. We had a lot more developments that we had no idea about, very, very dense developments too. So that's where that kind of discovery happened. As far as what we're doing to ensure that we are keeping this correct, that our understanding is correct, we're doing two things right now. The first is we went back to our model and we analyzed basically our whole sewer system and looked for anywhere where we might have potential constraints or where we have existing constraints. And that's where this map came from. The other thing we're doing is we're working on our service delivery plan right now, where we're partnering with planning and other departments and basically forecasting future growth. And that's helping us to basically plan ahead our improvements to make sure that whatever we are doing is going to address current issues for a long time and create capacity for the whole service area.
And so the forecasting of future growth might not match what actually happens, right? So how would the next time, you see where I'm going with this? Like how's our communication loop coming full circle to make sure?
So I think that's it. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? So from Nikki's perspective, short-term perspective here, I think what I've seen, what I've talked to Hollis and his team about is communication between PUD and planning is extremely important. Now, over the past several months, it's ramped up due to the fact that the future growth concept or the growth concept map, the future land use map, and the comprehensive plan. So I know they sat down and talked recently about what's coming, what do we need to be prepared for, what do we have capacity for. Now, theoretically, those conversations should have been happening the entire time. Maybe they were. I'll defer to y'all on that, but I know it's been happening more frequently, right?
What percentage of our capacity issues as we see them today are related to I&I versus just the pipe simply being full?
Virtually all of it.
So is it fair to say that this is driven more by condition than quantity?
That's correct.
Yes.
So when we get to the solutions, I'd ask that you keep that in mind If the pipes were in good condition, we would likely have capacity in areas that are currently not shown gray.
That helps. I don't know that.
Have we not?
I don't know all the flows in our pipes. So I keep.
I thought we went through a process. Didn't we have cameras at one time going through, looking at all our pipes and checking things and seeing that there was some I happening?
Well, we do a flow study. How many years? Every 5 years, every 8 years? We haven't done a flow study in a while. So condition is part of it.
It's a huge part of it.
But we haven't studied our flows.
Yes.
So just be clear here, like, let's put it all out there. So my recommendation is we're going to do new capacity study for the entire county.
Flows.
We're going to need to understand everything. So we need to know the condition of our pipes. We also need to know the flows going through the pipes, because we haven't done that in 8 years or 7 years, whatever that number is.
All right. Low capacity and pipe condition.
That's right.
And then that study would also, if we end up with another map, that study would also somehow account for all the stuff that we've already approved or have in development that's not built yet. So it's not actually showing up as flow, but it will after, they study it now and then a year later, the mall's done, or a year later, this hotel by the Classic Center's done. That flow wasn't going through the pipe then, but we know it's coming now. Like, how would that be built into that study?
I'm not a sewer engineer, so I can't answer that.
It'd be done before the project. And then after we put a project on, we always model the flows coming out in the model. So we will add them to the model. Any new infrastructure is always added to the model. So we capture the real time data.
Patrick, and then we're gonna move on to this.
It's quicker, so the reds are the trouble areas.
They are the trouble areas. McNutt's is to the left here. And I'll talk about them a little bit on the next few slides. The middle is the Mitchell Bridge area where we're having issues up. And then to the right is the Cedar Creek Basin. And we're gonna talk about them in just a minute. So I broke down some of the red, that's the Tanger. The yellow is the downtown district. A little bit more of the red here. And then some of the pink there. That's slightly constrained, but not fully constrained. So how do we do sewer evaluations? Modeling is done. We do modeling for dry weather and wet weather. Dry weather is 100% full with the pipe running. Wet weather is failure. Sewer surcharges manholes, sewers breach the ring and covers. Failures just because we deny development don't mean we stop. We start looking at historical spills in the area. We look at pipe size, slope, material. What's the alignment? Can we change that, the as-built versus what we see in the field? We put flow meters out on the trunk line, sewer lines to make sure the model is correct. Most of the denials are due to wet weather. So we have capacity during dry times. Most of the denials is during wet weather. And again, we talked about 80% of developments being approved. All right, so let's look at what the model looks like. This is development that will receive approval or have sewer capacity. From the bottom, you have where the purple line is, bluish line, the bottom of the line is the pipe. That's the sewer pipe. The next line above that, the black line, is the top of the pipe. And then all the way to the top where the red line is touching, that's where the manholes are at. So that's a development that's going to get approval because it's not spilling, it's not coming out. This is what a denial looks like. Denial is you have 5 manholes, which means they're at the top of the manholes and they're spilling. They're going all the way out the pipe. And you see it's just a constraint because if you look down closer to the right, there's pipe capacity there, but you just can't get it there. It's spilling before it gets there. So that's what we call a denial. And again, we try our best to work with developers to try to fix these issues if possible and maintain the gravity system. All right. Let's talk about some of the fixes we have, some coming up, but what I really want to drive is to the right, that picture is what we're trying to prevent. You know, when you get them sewer spill reports, that's what we're trying to prevent. And that's Millicone behind that sewer spilling. So that's, we try to work with developers, but at the same time, we want to protect the environment. That's what we're really trying to push. Let's talk about some of the fixes. And one new one to Athens that we think will work for some denied developments. Sewer lining. Sewer lining is not new. We've done one down Lexington Road. Basically, it's you got your manhole and pipelining. Basically, what it's done is it's letting groundwater, rainwater, and everything else come between holes within these manholes and pipes. And on the right, what we've done is we've lined it. We've eliminated groundwater, rainwater being able to pipe. By doing that, we gain capacity, but also we give that pipe a long life cycle, so we don't have to replace it as soon. We have to evaluate for this, but this is something that we can push forward. It is in the service delivery plan on some sewer that was approved in 2020. That will still be on 2025's update coming up. Pump station, new to us, as far as the county, not new to me. I've been in the field 25 years and having one is a luxury. This is Weatherly Woods. Basically, one thing we forget about, pump stations hold capacity. So this pump station can hold up to 1 million gallons of wastewater before it's pumped over to Cedar Creek. So some of the capacity could be captured in this pump station and held. Got 2 pumps, one regular, one duty, and then odor control and all that at the pump station, power generator. So that is another solution that we're going to present at the end.
So how many of those are we looking at doing? Because if it's power generated, I'm just thinking about this storm that came through in Augusta and their pump stations, and Asheville, their pump stations out of power for a month. That doesn't,
right.
It's not something I think we should rely on.
No, sir. But right now, we're only recommending possibly one within the solutions.
Is that an advantage?
Midnut Creek area.
We
got a different thing for advantage.
To Mike's point about the power issues, I know that some time ago, there was a pump station thing on Atlanta Highway. We had talked about this policy that I think got updated around solar power for these things. Would solar be a requirement on any pump stations that would enable them to stay running even if there's a network outage?
Battery backup opportunity.
We can add that. We just recently received a letter from EPD saying that they're good with pump stations in general for Athens.
And
So-
backup generators are also required.
Yeah, we have to have backup generators. But yes, it could be added to the policy.
So in a bad weather situation like Mike's referring to,
Yes.
the current code, the current policy requires that these are built in a way that would ensure they keep running even if storage of power goes down?
Yes. Yeah, we tested all of them before the storm came through the other week. And that's one that you see in the back.
And with like a backup generator, how long is that going? This is getting kind of in the weeds, but just trying to understand like how resilient are these fixes?
It depends on how long we have to run it. 6, 7 days a week.
7 days is right now what our generator setup do. We have had events in the past. I've been with the government 34 years, so we've hauled fuel during an ice storm event, and they've run longer than 7 days. So, and also the good thing about the Weatherly Woods lift station and its capacity is this: it gives you that time to get diesel fuel out there to the generator. And it also gives you time. You can manually operate that lift station. If being gravity, most of our lines are next to creeks, rivers, and streams. So if the rivers are flooded, and a lot of times that's what's happening to our major interceptor lines like middle of Coney. We get a hard rain, river comes out of the bank, it's over the sanitary sewer line. The river's erosion is a natural process, so the river banks have eroded over the time since those lines were put in the 50s. It's a lot wider now, so when that river comes out of the bank, it comes over the top of the sewer line. The lift station wet well gives you capacity to hold that sanitary sewer and give those flows time to subside. So during a major flood event, the lift station may not be running, you're just holding capacity. And as Hollis goes deeper into his presentation, we've got another solution. It's going to give us that exact capacity, but we can control the flows without having the electric pumps and needing the backup generators. But it's a new initiative. It would be a new initiative for us, but it would be wouldn't require any energy to operate, would take a little bit of telemetry with a control flow release valve. But Hollis can get deeper into that in the presentation.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm just trying to clarify, because I thought the solar thing was already made part of the policy for these. You're just talking about a diesel fueled generator. So I'm just trying to understand.
The diesel fuel has always been, even with the solar.
Okay, so what does the solar do? Is the solar?
There's essentially three ways it can be powered. It's powered by the grid, it has a backup generator, and then also it has solar power. So it's essentially just making sure you have two fail safes.
Okay, so so if it's sunny out after the flood, then the solar is enough on site to power it, and then the backup generator is just for when it's not sunny, so to speak.
That's correct.
For a period of time.
For a period of time.
Yes.
And as somebody who's been very active and passionate in that space, I would advise you all, don't ever leave out the diesel generator or the natural gas generator. Gladly put solar wherever you'd like, but you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket, especially when you're thinking about hardening against disasters.
Yep.
Sure, yes.
Right.
All right, this is something new. Holding tanks for sewer until the flows are low enough to release in the sewer. They can be discharged by a small pump or a valve. This is being used all over DeKalb County for their school. Their school systems were at one point where they couldn't build more schools to handle all the population coming in. And they came up with this solution. What it does is it collects it in the daytime and releases it at night. So it's not like a pump station where it releases on a regular basis. It actually releases in low flows. It stores it there on site. You could release it, if it's releasing 100 gallons per day, you can release it at 15 gallons per day. Depends on how you set it up. The main thing is that you can store it over time to allow for flows to get down the system and not spill. How big are those things? Like acreage or?
They would vary on the size of the development. Basically, when the engineer would send us his sewer demands, and we would run it in the model, we would have to size the tank according to the demands. They come in all different sizes right now.
So this is done, again, DeKalb, several different schools have it to help them gain capacity. There's a Cobb County hospital that is on one. They're using one. So this is what other counties are doing to gain that capacity while making infrastructure improvements from, 40, 50 years ago when they first installed. So this is one of the solutions we think will help us we can get more infrastructure in the ground. We would only need this in what we call 2 inches of rain in a short amount of time. Again, during dry weather, everything has capacity. So, right now we have capacity for everything. We can add whatever we want to. It's the rain events that get us. So during a rain event, there's a valve on the end of this storage tank that will close and start storing until we get it where you can see that the sewer main is lower and it opens and start releasing to the system. What we've been looking at is about 36 hours holding time. We don't typically have that rain, but we think that would be ideal. But in some areas, we won't have to reduce all the flow. We can throttle down. So, but this is working successfully in other counties as they increase their infrastructure as well.
So Hollis, do we have roughly mapped out where we would need these, or would that be part of the coming analysis?
Well, I can think of 5 developments that we have denied recently that could use this, and it would help theirs, move through. One of the things, that you bring it up, the Advantage Health is one place we could use this. And I think that will be coming for you on the next voting cycle.
So not a pump station then?
It's not a pump station, it's a holding tank.
Initially it was.
It was.
Then they did some additional, evaluation and research. So kudos to PUD thinking outside the box. And, if there's a silver lining to any of this, is that we've had to figure out other ways to do things and increase communication and coordination, to your point, Commissioner.
And can I just, the rain events, once we get the sewer in the future we all hope to achieve, where the pipes are all in the condition we want them to be, does the rain event cease to be as much of an issue because it's not getting into the sewer pipes?
500 miles, we will never, without spending billions of dollars, catch up. Now, we will fix a lot of them, but we will never be able, as soon as you fix one area, it's gonna move to another area, providing that pressure. But we can continue to improve the infrastructure as we go.
To add on to that, when we do make our improvements, we're factoring in the INI. So when we are upsizing an interceptor, for example, we're just going ahead and counting on that inflow and infiltration being in there. We're just making sure it's big enough to be able to take the INI and also capture flows. With the hope being, we're also putting in brand new concrete manholes, brand new pipe. So the INI should theoretically be reduced. We just don't count on it being reduced. If that makes sense.
So you're using sort of duplicative opportunities.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Like it. Joe.
Area crossings, as an example, we just brought up College Ave, North Ave. The College Ave you just approved, basically going from 12-inch going across the river to a 36-inch that would deliver to North Oklahoma. All right, let's talk about some of the fixes. I know this map is not big, but I did want to put some fixes that's coming up and that we've identified that we're going to tackle. Make recommendations for. Starting at the left in the red, we're going to talk about bypass pump station, which pulls some of the flows from the Middle County east line and put it on the west line, which we have more capacity. And it eliminates some of the capacity constraints that we have in the McNutt's Creek area, Jennings Mill area. So it eliminates them constraints until we can get pipe redone in that area. Next in the middle, sewer rehab, I&I, we're talking about pipeline. Box up top in the middle. So we're gonna do some pipeline.
Proximity wise, where is that, Hollis?
The Westgate.
Okay. Jefferson Highway.
Yes.
Next in the red, closer to the Middle County plant. That's the Middle County East line, upgrading from a 36 to a 48. That was one that you already pre-approved and preliminary design. It's been out. We've pre-selected qualified contractors. We'll be going out for bid shortly. So that's a big fix to some of the capacity constraints on that Middle County line. Next two, that would be the area crossings. That's going to free up capacity downtown. Once we put the two area crossings in, there's no more capacity on that side of downtown. We can develop more, we have more capacity, so we won't have capacity issues on that side once we put these two fixes in, phase one and phase two. And then last but not least, I think in the Cedar Creek Basin for now, we would like to start using these storage tanks. We have tried with one development to even a developer putting in extra sewer pipe or increasing pipe size. We've tried everything and just couldn't get it to work. This seems to be a fix for development on the Cedar Creek line for now. And it's one of the fixes, but that seems to be a fix on that one of them developments.
How many developments were on that, or in this area of Hollis?
It's quite a bit that we've been building over there for a while.
In
Cedar Creek.
in Cedar Creek, yeah, it's pretty well built out.
Yeah.
That might utilize this tank. Is it just one development?
Just
that might-
one right now in
Just the
Cedar
one.
Creek, yes, sir.
Is that a development that's under construction now or?
I'll tell you about it. So the sanitary sewer tanks is an alternative. It's not, because the ultimate goal is to have the pipe size, right?
We would like the pipe size, but it's a temporary fix to a permanent solution because from Lexington Road all the way to the plant, we would have to rerun pipe. That's how far you gotta run. It's a long way to increase the pipe size. So this will be a fix until we can relay that pipe.
So during the service delivery plan,
It is on.
well, actually, I'm sorry.
No, you're correct. It was in the 2020 service delivery plan. But there wasn't, the development now is different than 2020. So it's changed. So it was still on the list, but it wasn't hard because we had capacity. So, but yeah, that is definitely a fix for that. The Advantage Health Facility is a fix, that's storage tank is a fix for that. And we met with TSPLOST and on the same page with that. We have a location we want to put it in everything, where to work. And there's a few more developments. Dennis Mill area that wanted to develop. So we have a few areas that want to develop. We think would be useful in this. And again, these are temporary fixes because the pipes, the sewer lines or mains that are on these areas are slated to be upgraded. So they're not like, it's not on the list. It's like we don't have a big bucket of money to, unless we want to raise rates. And I don't know about you, but I like my water bill the way it is. So we want to make sure that we keep the rates down. And that's what we do, balance the two. You probably seen this with planning. I don't know. This is the growth map. We have been coordinating very heavy with this, with planning. With the service delivery plan, growth map, trying to make sure we capture what we need to make sure where we're gonna go, where the future growth is gonna be. So we've been, go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I did.
No, go ahead.
Well, so the future land use discussions that are underway are taking into consideration your previously multicolored mapping, and that is good news to know. I'm not surprised that you guys are overlapping, but it seems like in the last few months, you've had, opportunity and examples to make that maybe robust.
We've coordinated a lot better, I would say, in this update. You think same? Yeah. All right, look ahead, 2025 service delivery plan. We're gonna recommend some prioritizing in the fixes. What do you want fixed first, second, third? How do we're gonna make some recommendations and hope to have your support. We're gonna continue improvements in the sanitary sewer system, sewer rehab and lining to reduce the I&I, to gain that capacity by just lining, and then sewer replacement. Sewer replacement, reduce the I&I and increase its capacity. So Brooklyn Phase 2 coming up shortly. Sanford Phase 2 with UGA, but we still have to contribute towards it. So a lot of them capacity issues will be solved very, very soon. hope that you realize when we deny, there's a reason. We're trying to protect the environment, people that drink water downstream of us. But at the same time, invest in our infrastructure. Yes.
2 hours worth of questions.
Uh-oh.
I'm kind of.
Sam, this room for as long as you would like, my friend.
This professor thing too.
I have a question about that. I'm stuck on the sanitary sewer tank.
Yes, sir.
Once you fix the pipe, do you remove the sanitary sewer tank or does it stay or? How does that work?
It could go both ways. It could stay in place. You can bypass it or you can take it out. But it can go both ways. It could be a safety perhaps for the development after that.
And are we able to maintain those like we can pipes?
Yes.
20 years from now, those aren't full of stuff that's failing and leaking out or something.
Preferably, we're gonna bypass it and just go straight to the main or manhole and just have it where it can go there if needed.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying like if we're putting it in now as a safeguard and then leaving it there, are we also setting ourselves up to make sure that we keep track of it? So 20 years from now, when we haven't been relying on it, it hasn't turned into something that actually is like leaking.
It would have to have a maintenance program. I say a sewer line and these tanks would kind of fall in the same lines like the gutters on your home.
Yeah.
You have to clean them out and maintenance them for them to work properly. In these tanks and the sewer lines and our collection systems, that's why we have one of the most robust maintenance programs in the state of Georgia. And that's exactly why, and these tanks would be part of that maintenance program. They would have to, someone have to come out periodically, flush it back, just like you would a sanitary sewer line. And keep it working adequately and properly.
All right. All right. That's been everything out of it. All right, everyone's
Looking ahead
Is everyone
to
peace?
done. Good job.
going good.
Excellent.
All right.
Questions.
Appreciate everybody
We need
enjoying the Bruce Springsteen length meeting. Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
May get a draft.
Is there a second to adjourn?
Super second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
Thanks, guys.